we're gonna be here for a while. The goal for tonight is to go through all of the books that I've read this year from memory and like give a quick recap of what they are about and the star rating that I gave it at the time. I am gonna be going chronologically, and it does start with December of last year because I finished a book on, I believe, the 30th of December. On the 28th of December last year, I finished my first book of the year. Why? Because I didn't think it was fair to not include it. It was the very end of the year, so therefore it's included. What book is that? Blood, Ink, Sister Scribe. I remember really liking this book. The plot is essentially a version of a fantasy world where all magic comes from books. It's an urban fantasy in that it is the real world, but like, you know, magic's in it, but like it could very plausibly be happening at the same time as you and I are living in this world, and you're looking at two different perspectives, no, three, four really, if you want to count it that way. You have three sisters, that's the sister part, Blood, Ink, Sister Scribe, who are all descended from like this long line of bookkeepers who've like held on to this library of books for centuries, as far as we know. And one of them has the capabilities, like they each fall into the three different things of Blood, Ink, Sister, and Scribe, and they're all sisters, but some of them have the ability to actually be able to hear these magical books and like resonate with them. Some of them are able, sorry, one has that. One has the ability to actually spy magic, and one of them is immune and can't be affected by it. I think there's more to it than that. I think that's technically a spoiler. I'm not really sure. Spoiler warning for all of these books. And there's also like a boy involved with like a secret magical institute who have been doing the books things for ages and like are Epsteining things, and that they're able to like, there's a secret cabal behind all world power because they have like the power of these books, not nonsense, and have control over like the one guy they believe exists who's able to write books, not knowing that another character in the book can also do that. But the scandal of it all. I rated it 4 stars, and it was not written by a man. That is one of the metrics that is on the side of my spreadsheet. It is really fun to look at the answer for how many books I read that are by men this year. The answer, not that many. About like less than a quarter, like 20%. I'm actually quite proud of that. Moving into the actual start of 2025, we get to January, where I read 8 books. That began with non-binary author Aidan Thomas's The Sunbearer Trials. It is really good. This was a reread technically because I'd finally gotten access to the second book in the series, and so I wanted to reread the first one before I jumped in with Celestial Monsters, which comes later in the list. Think Percy Jackson insofar as you have the children of gods, but specifically this is Mesoamerican gods, and like you have the main character who is the son of Quetzalcoatl. Sick. Though in this iteration, Quetzalcoatl is not like an all-powerful feathered serpent. Nope, it's a hot bird lady. Great. And they Hunger Games everything, kind of, where someone has to take over as the new sun, S-U-N, and they were the new sun bearer, hence the title. And so the 10 of the best demigods are chosen by the god of the sun to compete to decide who gets to be the new sun bearer. And whoever comes first gets to be that one, and whoever comes last is ritually sacrificed to be able to continue the legacy of the sun. Woo! I finished this on January 8th, and I rated it 5 stars. It's just fun. It's not like a masterpiece of literature, but like it has so many queer and disabled characters that it's like almost a joke for like any conservative person out there. It is really well written. It is a quick read. It's fun. And I can really imagine it being like very formative to certain youth. Not like me. I'm in my 20s. I'm not young. I have gray hair. Moving on. The following 3 books that I read are all in one series by Melanie Sellier. Completed on January 9th, January 11th, and January 13th. I finished The Golden Princess, The Rogue Princess, and The Abandoned Princess, all by Melanie Sellier in her, God, it's gotta have like 16 books in it now of just retellings of fairy tales. I rated them 3 stars, 2 stars, and then 5 stars. I will have to make an entire other video explaining this entire like cinematic universe, because you want to talk about popcorn reading. This is like the height of popcorn reading. This woman has crafted a world in which she has perpetual generations of princesses because they keep getting married to princes who then have babies and all this nonsense. So last year I read most of this entire series, which starts with The Princess and the Pea, which is a wild first choice of like random fairy tale to go with. And then the Golden Princess, I'm pretty sure, because at this point we're like 15 books in, right? The Golden Princess, if I remember correctly, because oh my god, these books really do blend together. a lot. I'm pretty sure it's based on Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. I'm pretty sure the Rogue Princess is based on Puss in Boots. And then I'm pretty sure the Abandoned Princess is based on Rapunzel. And I say it like that because they are. I'm pretty sure they are, going from memory. The ones based on Puss in Boots isn't very good. I'm waiting for some neighbors to finish walking by. They're being loud. This room is not soundproofed. They're all like barely over 300 pages. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of them are genuinely really fun and really good. But they all have the same format, which is we have our new main character who is a girl, and she, for reasons, because obviously there's like 15, 16 books, finds herself at the start of a fairy tale, and you can usually figure out what fairy tale it is pretty quickly, unless you read the back, in which case you will find out immediately what the fairy tale is going to be. And for reasons, she gets thrown into conflict, and there's always a bit like you'll be introduced to the guy that she's gonna end up marrying by the end of the book pretty early on, and then she manages to like do the fairy tale, but it's not quite just like the original fairy tale. Like, for example, in the Rapunzel one, which is the Abandoned Princess, who is, we meet her originally when she's like 5 years old, but like 8 books ago, which is crazy. And it's not just that she is a princess stuck in a tower. She's very much that, but also she has a curse on her so that adults can't see her. So when she was like 12, she got cursed, and so it was just invisible to all adults. And to the local villagers, the villagers all think that the kids have like a collective imaginary friend. They all just grow out of magically when they turn like 16, 17. And part of the curse is that those kids like don't really remember that this is the case once they grow out of it. And so it's like them and then the witch, and that's it. Those are all the people who know that she exists, and also her family from back home in another country who still want to find her. Obviously it's their daughter, and also the princess, and so she is the abandoned princess. It's not on purpose, but she very much is that. And so I think, I'm trying to remember, this is back in January, I think that she does get saved by True Love's kiss, but like she doesn't though. Like she ends up kissing, yeah, that's what happens. She ends up kissing this guy who is like heard tale of this princess, manages to like find the invisible, intangible her. They manage to have True Love's kiss, but of course they've never really spoken. It's not even like a weird infatuation thing. Instead, he just like also gets trapped in the invisibility curse, if I remember correctly. And they do very much have to go and like murderize the witch or whatever it is. Like, they end up having this absolutely ridiculous, that's why I rated it so highly. They have this absolutely ridiculous Avengers Assemble style come together of like 3 generations of princesses at this point to be able to defeat the evil magic wielder. And so the ending like 40 pages are just like really fun. I also need to note, I say 40 pages, I mean 40 minutes. I did almost all of these via audiobook. That's also how I'm able to get to like, what is that noise? I have tape in my dress. Oops. But that's how I'm able to get to over 100 books in this year. I do a lot of time like knitting while listening to audiobooks. I love using my time well, and I'm usually doing them at a higher than recorded speed. Sue me. After I read that book, I came into another reread of The Magicians by Lev Grossman. The series gets a bad rap. It's got some bad elements to it. It's like there's like a whole thing about the series. It got like a sci-fi adaptation. SYFY, the TV channel? Sure, let's go with that. And that show has some issues, but it's also like pretty much completely different things by the time you get to the end of the first season. And that's also fine. It adapts books 1 and 2, kind of, not quite, but kind of. And then they diverge pretty wildly. I actually really like this series, and I will recommend it just with those big caveats in place. And it has a couple of uncomfortable scenes, and it is an interesting example of let's do Harry Potter but for adults, and we're gonna have the main character be like that one guy that you met who really wanted to get like isekai'd into Naruto and thought that he would be the new Hokage. That's basically what our main character is, and he's just not that. He's just not the main character. He's our protagonist, but he's not the main character. When there gets to a point where they're able to magically Narnia all these assholes who are the main characters, the ensemble cast, when they're able to Narnia themselves into Narnia, someone gets to become king. Like they do like the whole like multiple kings at once, and it's all like you have to be kids coming from our world, Earth, and he's not even one of the kings. He's not even good enough to do that because he's just a guy. He's just some guy. And I do kind of love him for that. He's a girl fail, but he's a boy, and I really appreciate that in a man. It's also one of the very few like series that have magic in it that I would never want to live in, because it is so believable that people with that magic do exist in our present day, but you have to be like MIT postgrad level of genius to even be able to do the most basic of spells. You need to be so good at quantum physics to even be considered able to maybe do this magic. But if you work hard enough and if you're smart enough to figure it out, you could do it. And I'm not that. I love Gideon the Ninth. I've got the poster about it and everything. I did not solve the mystery of Gideon the Ninth by the time I got to the end of Gideon the Ninth. I'm not that kind of person, and I'm okay with that. Oh, it's a 4-star read. I love it, but not that much. Completed literally one day later was His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik, which is the first book in the Temeraire series. And that book about dragons and the Napoleonic Wars is why Naomi Novik is one of my most read authors of this year. Because there are so many books in this series. And not all of them are as good as each other, but it's dragons in the Napoleonic Wars. So I had to introduce a new genre that I call historic dragons, and people disagree with me on this point that it's its own thing. It is. And I'll fight you on that, because the thing about it is the dragons in these books, they're just characters. It's not a Game of Thrones situation. It's not even a Tolkien situation. They're all just characters in their own right who happen to be dragons. And I don't know how else to explain it beyond that. It is just the Napoleonic Wars, but dragons are also there. So it's like a historical fiction where also dragons happen to be there. That's really what it is. So because of that, I genuinely struggle to call it a fantasy series. I think that if you want to take someone who exclusively reads Sarah J. Maas and you want to introduce them to the idea of historical fiction, this is probably a good series to do it with. And if you know someone who exclusively like reads fiction and refuses to even try fantasy, this is probably the series to introduce them. It's got one foot in both camps pretty solidly, but it is just the Napoleonic Wars but with dragons. Anyways, 5 stars. Naomi Novik. I mentioned that, right? Naomi Novik. Next comes the first book that I actually really didn't enjoy. That was What the River Knows by Isabella Ibanez. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. I rated it 2 stars. It was marketed to me similarly as the Temeraire series in that it's a historical fiction, or historical fantasy rather, where there are these artifacts that you can have residual magic in them, and we lost the ability to be able to craft new enchanted items. Yeah, in theory, it's that you have a girl from, I think it's like Argentina, whose dad is like parents are both like treasure hunters or something like that, and it's like Victorian era. It's gotta be like the height of like Orientalism and the mummies and all that. I would argue like the early 1800s-ish. I could be wrong. I'm doing this from memory. And she manages to essentially pawn her way into being able to head to Egypt to try and find her Egyptologist parents who went missing ages ago before she can get married off. A good enough premise by itself that I don't need fantasy to go along with it. That's interesting enough by itself. That's a historical mystery. I'm into it. That sounds really cool. Because of that, because you're adding in these magical items where essentially you just deus ex machina in everything. So like the way this girl is able to try and like find her mom and her parents is to like use these magical artifacts to be able to like a bloodhound sniff out what direction she needs to be going in. And so in multiple instances, you just get these moments where if it was a better written historical mystery, you'd be able to work your way through it and logic everything out. Instead, we have like a hairbrush that tells you exactly where you need to go by vibes alone. And I mean it exactly as I said that. And I just don't respect that as much. I I think it's lazy. I think that there's an interesting premise in here, and either I want more of the magic or I want none of it. Currently, it's just a plot device, and not even it's just a lazy one. And so no, 2 stars. There's a second book in the series. I have no interest in reading it. Rounding out January, we have finished on January 29th, 28th? 28th, I think. Is Ninth House by Lee Bardugo, which has been on my TBR for ages. A goal of mine this year was to try and read more dark academia for reasons. I don't know. Just like the one that I wanted to do for reasons. And in reading it, I really enjoyed it. I think I rated it 5 stars. It's not a masterpiece, but I had a fun time. It's an urban fantasy, dark academia, where you have the main character who is this chick who is like a former, like, troubled kid who's now going to, it's either Yale or it's fake Yale. It's one or the other. And she has a innate talent for seeing, hearing, touching, interacting with ghosts in general. Though that's not what they call them. They call them something stupid, like shades or something like that. Grays, maybe? I think it's grays is what they end up calling them. And that's just like not a thing as a rule. No one's able to just like kind of do that, but she can. For reasons that make sense, and I think maybe even get explained, not that I remember. And before the book even starts, her mentor is murderized. I think he like literally gets dragged to hell or something like that. Like it's bad. And so she's having to pretend that like her perfect, like Connecticut-based golden boy all-American mentor isn't just still alive, but is still alive and still largely running the show as she deals with an increased amount of like murders and nonsense on campus. And so it's a thriller, it's a mystery, it's a crime, dark academia, and also ghosts are there. Having also spent most of the year trying to read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, the thing that I've taken away from it, having read a lot of dark academia now, is that in The Secret History, it's really good and there's like a vibe to it. And someone read it and went, bet it would be better with magic, and they were right. And so you get a lot of dark academia that just had a lot of magic to it, and they're right. It's kind of the missing puzzle piece. And so you deal with like trauma and anxiety and magic, and it's fun. It's great and it's fun. I'm actually like struggling to remember many of the plot points. I just know that I enjoyed it, so it was a 5-star read. My stats for January were 8 books read, 0 books DNF'd. My average rating was 3.89, and the average page count for the books that I read were, let's round up, 377. Moving into February, I read 7 books. Here's what they were. First, I DNF'd The Poisons We Drink by Bethany Baptiste, my first DNF of the year. I got, I think, like more than halfway through and was shocked that I still had another half of the book to read, and I just went, I'm not doing this. I'm done. I feel like I've hit the climax of this book and that all that needs to be done with it is done. I don't feel the need to finish it. I 100% picked this up and a couple other books on this list because of a whole book talk controversy like last year of someone using sock puppets to dramatically downvote a bunch of other seem to be releasing indie authors who were like debut authors. Unfortunately, this book, I just kind of hated it. I like the idea. It's based in DC, which felt very nostalgic for me as someone who grew up in the DMV. The slang that was used and the audiobook narrator very much had the DC accent. It was nice. It is a very interesting sounding world wherein you have humans and witches are fundamentally different. They have different physiological aspects to them, like their blood runs at a higher temperature, and they have different power sets, though there are like a lot of pros and cons to it. Like it's a very interesting world building. It's good urban fantasy world building, but just the story just and the writing just couldn't live up to it. I really like the world building. Like a major issue to that world building being executed well was the fact of, I just mentioned that like the witches have a different physiognomy, something like that, to regular humans, and that is used to do things like put COVID-style heat readers at the front of stores. That way, because you like, can't have too many witches congregating in one spot, which is a very blatant use of allegory towards disenfranchisement and for people who are not white. Let's be concise about it. And it's like it's the race allegory to it is extreme. And because of this, you have this heat reader, so that like, there's a counter over on the door. So like when 12 witches are in the same room, you can't have any more than that. Otherwise, it's illegal and they must disperse because they're afraid of witches coming together to entirely annihilate and subjugate humans. I get it. I get the allegory. I do. But the problem with that is it doesn't take into account that the physical differences aren't that much. So if someone with a really bad fever walked in, they would register as a witch. And that is like the bare minimum of issues when it comes to how this book was written. The way that the magic system is like worded makes sense until you think about it for like a picosecond. I don't even remember like any specifics. It's just like I really wanted to like this book, and it has a whole. I liked the idea of, you know, a Black woman speaking her truth and writing a story where the act of being genuinely more powerful is in and of itself a radical thing just to exist and talking about it. But it just wasn't done well. And a lot of the explanations for things just didn't sit well with me. I think I had more to say about it when I had like freshly read it, or failed to read it, I guess. That's the best I can say for now. I DNF'd it because I couldn't bear dealing with how much a book was left when I already wasn't enjoying myself by the time that I hit the 50% mark. I think I had like a long Goodreads review on it before I switched from Goodreads to StoryGraph.
Sorry if I look deranged. I've been sick, and you can tell from my voice. I did find that original review from my Goodreads account, and it was mostly just me talking about the world building and how much it kind of sucks. So I think I need to retract that point. But I did give it a 3 stars despite it all.
Maybe I'll add it in post. Moving on. February 6th, I finished Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. Proper fairy tale. 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. If you are familiar with the whole story of the woman in the moon goddess from Chinese mythology, congratulations. You have more of a leg up in terms of understanding this book than many other Westerners probably would. That happened back in the day, and you proceed to get a beautiful story of the daughter of the moon goddess having a wonderful epic fantasy mythological story, going down to the mortal realm and then joining the heavenly palace. And it's incredibly Chinese. If you don't know Chinese mythology, honestly pick up this book and get a primer for it. It's probably the best way to phrase it, and then move on from there and do your own research and like start looking into the actual myths that are very heavily making up this book. It's beautifully written. It's got like, it's incredibly classic. Like you can kind of tell where things are going. It's not hard to figure out who the bad guy is. It's just a proper fairy tale, but Chinese. And I really recommend it. I really enjoyed it. It has a second book that I finished later on in this same year. February 8th, I finished a reread of my favorite book of all time, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which I helpfully rated 10 out of 5 stars. Everything's been on a 5-star scale. This is my favorite book of all time. Erin Morgenstern is kind of famous for the fact that she's written 2 novels in total, and both of them are like grade A classic bangers. They're both phenomenal. But this is about Starless Sea, which is her more recent release, where it's an urban fantasy. Love an urban fantasy, where you have a guy who is, for reasons, manages to find his way into a magical underground, which is a library that spans the entirety of the earth. And between chapters, you get these stories that start having these really repetitive themes, and that have these motifs that keep coming up. It's very Magnus Archives in that way, in that if you understand how structure of stories works, then you're able to look at it and go, oh, you're telling me an entire other story with these characters in between telling me stories about my main character, who is well past the heyday of this library, of when it was well populated, where people were partying all night and day. And then there's him, who is seeing the remnants of this beautiful lost society and the people who are trying to dismantle what is left of it. Why? Because they want to protect the legacy of what is left of this underground library, of this secret magical world. It's not particularly magical other than having like timey-wimey dimensional nonsense. It's just beautiful. I believe I called it like lyrical poetic fiction, because I love it that much. Also, the Waterstones edition of it is so crazy beautiful, where it's got the themes of each of it's got like these symbols on it, like the bee and the sword and the key, and you can see the boy running through the pages of the book. I really can't put into words just how good this book is and how you just kind of need to experience it for yourself. If you love books, you should read this book. If you're the kind of person where you were like, man, I'm waiting for my letter to Hogwarts, which, moving on, we don't need to talk about Harry Potter much more than that. But like, if you wanted to open a cupboard one day and fall into Narnia, if you were just waiting to go to the Shadowhunter Academy, I'm naming a lot of books that like I don't actually care about that much. But like, if you had your moment of being like, I am so sure that I'll get whisked away to the world I'm supposed to be in, this is going to make you really feel things, because suddenly you have a much more realistic world that you might fall in. Anyway, February 12th, I finished my first proper 1-star read, which is The Demon Tide by Laurie Forrest. I believe it's like book 4 of the Black Witch Chronicles, and it sucks so much. I have so many words to spend on why this sucks that I'm going to choose to not talk about it until I get to the 5th and final book of that series that I read, which is called The Dryad Storm, to talk about it even a little bit. In short, they are so wildly bloated that your only option is to skip through portions, because it's just not worth your time to actually read all of it. It has the bones of what is almost a good story, and then by the time you get to the end of book 2, it is dropped entirely, and instead you deal with just the worst, very sudden, incredibly smutty series of books, where the smut is terrible, and also it just feels Mormon, and I'll talk about that later.
Fun fact, I never actually got around to talking about how weirdly Mormon it is. It's one of those things where I went on a whole tangent looking up Laurie Forrest, trying to figure out like what her background is. I couldn't find any definitive proof that she's Mormon, but dear God, she feels like she's one of the Duggars.
Get to that book. This book sucks. I do not recommend it. Not even as a hate read. It's too long to be a good hate read. On the other hand, 3 days later, on February 15th, I read So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole, which was a 5-star read for me, which was from the same list of books that got The Poisons We Drink came from, in terms of books that got besmirched by that one author like a year and a half ago now. It's so good. I like dragons. It's a book about dragons, and also they're lesbians, and also like incredibly like specifically African like sensibilities towards magic that is then going up against Western European styles of magic that had the dragons, and so you have ancestors versus dragons, and also necromancy is in there a little bit. Instant 5-star read. Cannot recommend it more highly. Also, there are lesbians. No brainer. So good. February 18th, I finished reading Celestial Monsters by Aidan Thomas. I didn't like it nearly as much as the first book in this series.
I gave it 3 stars. I never actually said that.
Which was the first thing I finished this year, which is Sunbearer Trials. Celestial Monsters, 3 stars. It's a conclusion to the duology. It's very good. It's very sweet. I just didn't love the structure of it as much as the first book. You get to deal with more actual monsters, as opposed to just infighting amongst kids. In theory, that broader scale, it's gonna do one of 2 things. Like, it's gonna make it either a much better read than the first one and make the first one worse in comparison, or it's not gonna live up to the expectations, and then also you have bigger shoes to fill because you have bigger stakes. I don't think it hit the mark nearly as well as the first book. It's still worth reading because it's the conclusion to the duology, and the first book is so good that you do really want to finish reading it. And it's still cute, and it's still fun, but it's just not as good. It's fine. February 20th, I read the next book in the Temporary series called Throne of Jade by Naomi Novik, where the dragons in the Napoleonic Wars go to China for reasons. 4 stars. It's good. Moving on. February 28th? Was it a leap year this year? The last day of February. No, 28th is not. 29 days in February when it's a leap year. So February 28th, I read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I rated it 3 stars. I've heard a lot of good about the series, which is all about like multi-dimensional world hopping magic, fun goodness. I actually don't even remember the plot very well. I know there's you got world hopping. You got world hopping and magic users and the concept of languages, I think, something like that. It's despite how highly rated this specific series is by V.E. Schwab, I genuinely just don't actually remember a lot about it. Which probably says a lot about why it's a 3-star rating for me. It's probably more like a 2.5, 2.75, but I just rounded it up because it's easier. It's someone else's cup of tea, color of tea, that too. And so my stats for February were 7 books read with 1 book DNF'd. So 7.5 really. My average star rating was 4.14 and the average page count was 469. Turns out if you're not reading a bunch of books that are just fairy tale adaptations, that number just jumps. Also, to be fair, that one Laurie Forrest book, but The Demon Tide, was almost 700 pages. That's part of why it sucks so much. It doesn't need to be 700 pages. That is 200 pages more than Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, and I wish I had more pages of that. I wish those numbers were flipped, but they're not. Hate that series. Moving on to March. I read 8 books in March. Here's what they were. I started with The Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I rated it 2 stars. It's a dark academia book without being a dark academia book insofar as it's dark, but there's no academia because specifically the main character is like a college dropout or something like that. You got a haunted house scenario with a very Jane Eyre style, like a ugly man who lives in it, who the main character has access to for reasons, and it's literally called the Starling House, and they have an old family curse or something like that, and so she shouldn't be there, but like the house is alive kind of and really likes her, and it's like a small town mystery in terms of like who her secret parents are or something like that. It's forgettable. 2, the romance is annoying. The romance doesn't need to be there, and honestly it almost feels borderline like Luke and Leia, if I remember correctly. I wanted to like it more than I did. Leave it at that. It's, if you want fucking, I guess I would recommend it to someone who liked The Haunting of Hill House but thought it was too scary and wanted more romance. Oh, you know what? I read a book earlier this year and I realized that's what it's gonna be. If you were a teenager who read the Inheritance Games and really liked it, you should read this book. And hopefully you've gotten older enough that it's more appropriate and it'll make you want to read more books that are a little more interesting, like The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. That's a really good book. Moving on. March 4th, I DNF'd A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. It just pissed me off. We have, I don't even remember what it's supposed to be about. Something about like a PhD student, like it's a dark academia book. Something about like a PhD student going to try and like research one specific thing, and also there is like an academic rival that you just know they're gonna bang by the end. Something about architecture, I think, and I think that she's like the only woman allowed in the field and there's misogyny in there. I don't really remember. I just remember being really pissed off by how annoying and depressing the main character was. I couldn't stand listening to her voice, essentially. And she's supposed to be super smart but kept doing stupid things. And that is like my biggest pet peeve. If you're not smart enough to write a smart character, don't tell me they're smart. Just write the character. If you write the character and they're making mistakes and also you're telling me that they're smart when they're doing dumbass things, I'm not gonna like you and I'm not gonna like the book. It's also why I don't like the Cruel Prince series. Jude Duarte. Idiot. Moving on. March 5th and then March 9th, I finished reading 2 more of the Temeraire series. That's books 3 and books 4. I rated them 4 and 5 stars respectfully. I do not remember the plots for either of these. There were dragons and it was the Napoleonic Wars. I'll let you know when we get to the one where there was Australia, because that's where I stopped reading it for this year. I think I still have like another half dozen books to read in the series. I don't really think I need to finish reading them. I really enjoyed up until book 4 though, I'll tell you that much. I don't remember if there's any more than that I enjoyed as much. We'll find out later as I go through this list. It's all by Naomi Novik. Good. Oh my god, here is another book that I DNF'd. March 13th, I DNF'd To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang. Another book where we have a main character who's supposed to be like super smart and just isn't. I totally got tricked because the cover art of this book is incredible. It's really gorgeous. And I liked the idea of it. Something about like assassinations and all this nonsense. I remember like looking at some of the reviews that were made about it and how it's like a colonialist romance. I didn't even get that far. I was too annoyed with the main character and like the writing style to get past. I think I got like 15% in. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not making myself do this just because it has a good cover. And I moved on. DNF'd. On March 17th, though, I finished reading The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. 5-star read. It's a horror. It's a zombie book that is not a zombie book. It is not The Walking Dead. This is very dystopian where we have like some kids that were essentially born to zombies. And so these kids have it's a mushroom zombieification, classic these days. That's kind of the standard these days, I feel. And so we have the main character is a little girl who is a zombie. And start with the fact that like she's in a military research facility with like a bunch of other kids who just reading about how they're treated is insane. And it makes you feel crazy. I don't want to have any kids. This made my maternal instinct come out. And then it turns into like separately. It then becomes a very fascinating zombie story about trying to get through a zombified England. It takes place in England. I cannot recommend this more highly. It is so good and it hurt my feelings. 5 stars. Adored this book. March 22nd, I read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I have an entire other video on this channel that is me and a friend of mine discussing this book. She moved back to America, so there's never going to be another episode of that. But we did read this book together, and I really enjoyed it. She didn't. I had a good time. I like a fairy tale book. We've established this by now. I've read like, by the time that I finished reading this, I'd already read like 5 other fairy tale books. Sue me. This one's Russian. 2 days later though, on March 24th, I finished reading Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. 5 stars. I live for my boy, Hamish Abernathy, but the only person I live for more is Maisie Donner. My girl. Could not love her more. I can't wait for the movie. I've been on that train since day one. It's Sunrise on the Reaping. It's another Hunger Games books. It's a prequel. It's about Hamish Abernathy going through the Hunger Games in the Second Quarter Quell and how he became an alcoholic. Man, I finished it while I was at work and I was fighting not to sob. I was like telling people yeah, it's great. Read the ending when you're alone because otherwise you're gonna hurt your own feelings and it will be your fault. Moving on. On March 27th, I finished Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. It was a 3-star read for me. Historical fiction. Not really. Actually, it's more of a horror. It was sold to me as witchcraft in the late 50s, early 60s. Girls who were pregnant in a halfway house for pregnant girls waiting to give birth, essentially, who ended up taking up witchcraft as a way to take power back. It's not that. It's a body horror. It's a body horror where where most of the horror is, other than having the Rosemary's Baby of it all, of not having control of your literal body, it's also just systemic horror in the way that the world around you is stacked to make your life worse. That's what it really is. And also they learn to do magic, kind of. And again, it's rough magic. It's not, and it's not even like guaranteed that the magic that they're doing is real per se. It's just systemic misogyny, the book, and it takes place, I think, a few years before Roe v. Wade was passed, which got overturned a few years back from now. So I'm expecting a follow-up from the same author soon. That's the hope. Just a bit of a slog, though. Despite all of it, despite having a lot of good bones, I found that it was just kind of difficult to read, as book being just kind of boring. Somehow, despite everything I just said, I found it kind of boring to read and didn't really want to keep reading. Like, not in a I'm dreading what's going to happen next way, just in a I don't know if I care enough to finish reading this. But I did. 3 stars. And then on March 30th, I read another book about dragons by Naomi Novik, and I rated it 4 stars. It's the 5th book in the series. We're moving on. I was really enjoying this series. I do not remember what happens in it at all. There were dragons and there was war and stuff happened. I don't remember the specifics. So with that, that's the end of my March reading, and my stats for March were 8 finished books, 2 DNFs, a average page count of 405 pages, and an average star rating of 4. I've read a lot of good books in March. Moving on to April, where I read 10 books. On April 2nd, I finished reading The Cabin for Liars by Alexis Henderson. I rated it 3 stars. More realistically, it's more like a 2.5. It's another dark academia book where it's another, like, one where you go to college to do magic. There's a lot of books in that genre, to be fair. And I don't even remember what the magic system was like for this one. I just know that it had something to do with being psychic, I think, something like that. And the main character being, like, particularly strong. I think the part where it went downhill for me was that they forced a romance between her and her teacher. I think I probably would have rated it higher if that wasn't there. It's just unnecessary. I think time travel ends up being a thing in it. I think there's definitely at least one murder. Actually, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't even super remember all of the details of this book. It was just kind of a nothing, and I think the minute that romance pissed me off. I really didn't like how it was included. It didn't need to be there. It was way more interesting when it was just about our girl. But it didn't get to stay that way, and so I stopped reading it. And by that I mean I stopped remembering any of the details. I finished it. I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. But that pissed me off. 3 stars, I guess. 2.5. What did I say? Yeah, I said 3 stars. I don't stand by that. April 7th, I finished The Boy and the Bridge. It is the sequel to The Girl with All the Gifts. I rated it 2 stars. I don't remember what it's about. I'm trying to, though. It's a zombie book in the same realm. And there are zombies. And we have a boy main character this time. Oh my god, what is this book even about? What happens? What even happens in this book? Yeah, I give up. It's kind of unmemorable. It's a bad sequel. Read The Girl with All the Gifts. Don't bother with the sequel. Miss Andre. April 10th, I finished another Temeraire series book by Naomi Novik called Tongues of Serpents. I rated it 2 stars. I don't remember what it's about. I think at this point we were in Africa, maybe? And we had different types of feral dragons show up, maybe? I don't remember. I don't remember. I know I was blasting through these books. I don't remember what the hell happens in any of them. You have dragons and they fight in the Napoleonic Wars and they win, I think. And there's a bit about China, and there's a bit where they go to Africa because Temeraire and other dragons are like sick and they go to grab like medicine, and then they work their way up. And there's a bit where like treason happens because I think, oh yeah, that's what it is. Like they find the cure for this debilitating sickness, and then intentionally infect French dragons who we've established. The dragons are just people. They're just other characters, and so it's a Geneva Convention failure. It is what's the word I'm looking for? Biological warfare. They do biological warfare on the dragons, and so our main characters, they flount the authority of the British monarchy, and they say, actually, we're not going to do a war crime. Quite thank you. We're not doing this. And so they roll into France with the cure, which is a choice. We meet Napoleon for the first time. He's fun. And they cure all of their dragons because, hey, man, that's royally fucked up. We're not doing that. And then I think they get sent to a penal colony in Australia because they did treason. They did treason really bad. And that might be where we are at book 6, but it might not be. I don't remember. They all blur together. Read the series, it's fun. I did rate this book 2 stars though. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies was completed by me in terms of reading on April 13th, and it is by Heather Fawcett. It is a 5-star read. You want to talk about historical fiction, historical fantasy? Great. Read this book. It's just fun. The main character, it's all journal entries, and it actually like justifies it and is fun. It's a bit of a romance that happens, and it's so believable, and you love all the characters. You get a main character who's so autistic coded that it's actually criminal, and she is a researcher of fairies. She's a dryadologist. Fun. Love that. And she goes off to like some remote corner of like Iceland or something like that to research the fairies there, and has the hardest time with the locals because she's autistic. And then her colleague that she hates because he's beautiful and funny and smart, and he's also incompetent and he sucks, and he makes his grad students do all his work for him. Well, he and his grad students show up to help because he wants to help like be a co-author on her final paper or whatever. And they do research and they're together, and it ends up being a cute little romance between them. And then also you're like, man, people keep saying this guy seems a lot like a fairy. I wonder if he's gonna turn out to be one. Anyway, it's a 3-book series. Highly recommend it. So fun. So good. So fun. 5 stars. April 16th, I finished reading Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. It is a 3-star read. I did it by audiobook. I think I might like it better if I tried to read the hardcover version of it. It's an existential horror. People go to the Floridian Everglades. It's only women. And confront their past made real in the form of a alien abomination that changes everything around them. It's been compared to like cancer, and there's a lot of really good think pieces on it, and I wanted to read the book myself so I'd be able to engage with them more fully. But the problem is something about it. I just didn't get it. I think I should try and reread it. It's short enough I wouldn't feel bad about rereading it. It's a lot of people's like favorite horror book, but it's not mine, unfortunately. Oh my god, we're only an hour. I'm an hour into filming, and I'm not even through April. This is the problem. I need to pick it up. April 18th, I finished reading Compass and Blade by Rachel Greenlaw. It's a 2-star read for me. I don't remember what it's about. That is a running theme you'll find. If it's 2 or 3 stars, I just may not remember the contents of the book whatsoever. Compass and Blade is one of those. I think it's a fantasy. I think there's romance in it. Might be. I don't remember. It's just not good enough for me to remember. April 19th, I finished Adrift in Currents Green and Clear? Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear by Shauna McGuire. 5-star read. It's short. It's the most recent edition in the Wayward Children series, which is technically called the Every Heart a Doorway series. The whole premise of this is each of the books are either about a kid who got Narnia'd, who got isekai'd into another world, and the adventure they went on there before being forced back into the real world, and maybe how they got home. Home being the world they got sucked into. Or it's a book that's taking place in the real world that is confronting the issues that come from being a kid who gets isekai'd and the results that would have on your psyche. They're all phenomenal. They're all short. I recommend every single one of them. A lot of them you can read by themselves. Just read them in publication order though. It's easier. And they're all very good. This one in particular has a girl who has a deformity is not the right word. Disability. She was born without one arm. She was adopted from Russia, and then her parents tried to forcibly assimilate her into American culture. And she manages to get away and go to another world where everyone like lives kind of underneath the water, and there are giant turtles. It makes more sense when you read it. It's very good. Highly recommend it. On April 21st, I finished reading Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. 5-star read. You want to talk about the inequalities of the world? read this book. You want to just kind of be more knowledgeable about them, but don't want to have to do too much research. Also read this book. It is really well written with a really good framing device in terms of talking about tuberculosis as an individual thing and the direct effects that it has had on society throughout the centuries, while at the same time talking about it in the modern day, specifically as John Green himself goes to
Sierra Leone. I know you couldn't remember at the time.
But talks about, like, he's looking at an in-depth case of one kid called Henry who has had tuberculosis since he was like 5 or 6, and the result that that has on the human body, and just, you know, putting a face to a name, kind of, as it were, to look at what the modern ramifications are towards healthcare inequality in the world. You should read it. Just as a rule, you should read it. Also, the audiobook version of it is read by John Green, and that hurts. He's very good as an orator. April 24th, I reread Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao. It's the story, it's a sci-fi novel where you have the story of the rise of the first empress of China, first female empress of China, first female emperor in China, her rise to power, but do that, but with mech suits. It's great. You have really fun polyamory representation. It's great in that way by itself. It's just a fun read. 5 stars. Easy. And then right after that, I finished reading on April 29th, I believe. Yeah, April 29th, I finished reading Heavenly Tyrant, which is the sequel to Iron Widow. It's not quite as good. It is a little more political, and like you can feel, like, having read more about like Chinese history in this year in general, you can, God, what, I think it's called the Red Lipstick era or something like that, follows the rise of Wu Zetian, who is, that's the name of China's first female emperor, excuse me, slash the main character of this series. Really fun. Can't wait for the 3rd book to come out. At that point, I'm going to be really curious how it becomes an allegory to Chinese history again without being that, because by the time we get to the end of book 2, newsflash, we're in space. That sounds like a spoiler. It's actually not. I'm not going to go into any further detail about it. It's Chinese history, but with mech suits. It's great. It's fun. Read it. What's stopping you? With that, my stats for April were 10 books read. My average rating was 3.5. 0 DNFs though, and the average page count was 330, which is probably how I was able to, you know, cram in some extra books in there. Yeah. Moving on, let's go on to May, where I read 4 books in total. You will notice that is a pretty decisive dip in comparison to the prior 4 months. And we can very much blame it on Laurie Forrest and her terrible writing. May 8th, I finished Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I rated it at 4 stars. It's the story of a bitter man who no one likes dying and becoming a ghost. That's like the first 3 pages. That's not it's not a spoiler. And going to kind of the in-between points between living and dead before moving on to heaven. And coming to terms with the fact that he was a raging asshole that nobody liked and nobody loved, and becoming a better person as a ghost, and dealing with the consequences that follow from that. It's really sweet, and it made me cry. I really liked it. TJ Klune has issues. Definitely gets the tears out of me, though. After that, on May 19th, which is the longest gap between completions of books that you will have noticed by now, at a solid 11 days, I finished reading Dryad Storm by Laurie Forrest. Holy shit. This book sucked so much. The only reason I didn't DNF it is because there were 4 books before it, and I was like telling myself I was working on making a video about it, but by the time that I finished this book, I just couldn't even do that. I couldn't even finish, like, that's one of the videos I scrapped for this year, was talking about this series, because it's so bad and just life-draining that I couldn't even think about sitting down to edit the footage that I had taken. It is that bad. I stand by the fact that books 1 and 2 work really well as one really long book measuring like 1,200 pages, where at the end you're like, great, what happens from here? And it all just goes so wildly downhill. You have like triple the amount of fantasy races that Tolkien has, and about septuple the amount of bigotry and racism that our world has. And man, that is a high bar to clear in the first place. And the way that the final book manages to solve racism, to fix prejudice. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm gonna say this. One of the fantasy races is dryads, which is tree fairies. And trees are the ultimate good. And they take the racists, because every single racist, whether they're one of the ones that's trying to do a genocide or whether it's one of the ones who's like, hey, you're part of the race who's doing a genocide, like the main character, therefore I hate you, they both have the same level of nuance, and all of them sound the same in terms, like they all have the exact same thing. We hear the same arguments about why racism is bad, but also why racism is justified 40 billion times in this series. Like, I started skipping through them by the time that we got to book 5, by the time we got to book 3, more accurately. And they all sound the same. They're all bad. They're all equal. They're all treated as if they're equally bad, or at least equally annoying. They're all equally annoying. And to just speedrun a Charlie Kirk debate, they just have the trees eat people. And I know what that sounds like, but I mean, they make people go get baptized by the trees, essentially, to be eaten. And I mean that exactly as I phrased it, to essentially see how everyone is one and one person and why you should empathize with others. Just speedrun therapy, and they get spit back out, and they have like green skin now, and then they get a pet, a magical pet. I'm being concise and it sounds confusing. It is exactly as stupid as that sounds. I will say huge props to this one book for making me feel way more uncomfortable, like finding the only thing that is worse than having a familiar that is a giant spider, and that is having someone have a familiar that is a giant tick. Do you know how much that sucks? Like, congratulations, you found the one thing worse than a spider. It's a tick. It's actually worse. You're right. There's so much romance in it, and all of the romance is bad, and all the romance sucks. Like, I feel like I read the spiritual successor to if E.L. James and Stephanie Meyer had a baby, and they just became way more religious, and then they wrote a book, and it was bad. That is this series. Again, this final installation was, Jesus Christ, 795 pages. It's almost 800 pages long. I can't even recommend hate reading it, because it's just that bad. It is that bad, and there is so much about it. Like, the first 2 books had so much in the way of legs to it. Should have had a better editor, but everything that happened after that, it read like someone vomited onto a page and then let it dry. And that is the series as a whole. I cannot recommend a series less if I tried. It is god awful. Do not read. If I have made you curious enough to want to try and read this book, just DM me, and I will instead do a proper, I will go in and finish editing my video so I can tell you exactly what happens. That way you don't have to read the series. Don't read the series. Immediately after I finished reading it, I DNF'd another book on the same day, on May 19th. Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. I have a copy of it now, somewhere in this room. I tried to do the audiobook version of it, and I couldn't do it because the narrator was terrible. And I think I got like 5% of the way in, and I went, I'm actually not doing this to myself. I don't hate myself that much. I'm not fucking reading this. So I didn't, and I put it down. Because that is how much Laurie Forrest broke me. It made me go, House on the Cerulean Sea really touched my heart, and I really enjoyed it as a book like years ago. So I finally got the sequel, and I started trying to read it, and it was so terrible that I couldn't read it. That's how broken I was. I got back into anime back in May. I rewatched most of My Hero Academia back in May. That is how bad that series was. I was procrastinating reading by watching anime. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Jesus, because of that, it took another 9 days, and it took another week and 2 days to, on May 28th, read Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I rated it 4 stars. It's been recommended to me 7 billion times. I enjoyed it, but I will say I started reading the second book in it, and I don't enjoy it as much. I don't know. If you've heard anything about Brandon Sanderson, you should probably read Mistborn. Don't force yourself to read things if you don't have to. For example, today I started just on a whim reading Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. That book is delightful. We're gonna get back to December later. Let's finish up May, shall we? Another book that I rated 3 stars I don't remember the plot of. May 30th, I finished reading City of Stardust by Georgia Summers. I listed it as an urban fantasy. I don't remember what it's about. It's a 3-star read, so it's probably more like a 2.5-star read. I tend to overrate things more than I should. I don't remember what happens in this book. It had a pretty cover though. I remember that much. After that, by the end of May, my stats were 4 books read in total, which is literally half of the months prior, with 1 DNF, where the average page count was 516. And I'm gonna choose to take a break now because even thinking about Laurie Forest's terrible Black Witch Chronicles makes me feel the need to take a break. I will say, June, I read 9 books again. And we got back up there, but I'm taking a break. I'll be back to you in a minute. Hey guys, I need to start with an apology on several fronts. First of all, it's actually been a couple of days since I last filmed, and the reason for that is I took a break and then took a nap by accident. And by the end of that, I was like, you know what, actually? Fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna let it be. And then it's been 4 days since then. I've had my my hair cut slightly, and I've had my color done. And I also need to apologize because the kids next door keep fucking screaming. And I decided to give up and just let it be. Oh, I could tack up my duvet, but then I'd cover up my pretty wall. I might have to do that later. I might have to nail a duvet onto the wall and go from there and hope that that helps with like sound dampening. I've got 2 duvets that are spare. Duvets? I'm very appreciative of your time here. I just need to pull up my list of, you know, the books that I've read this year. Where the hell did we end? The end of May, I believe. Incredible. June 3rd, She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. 4 stars. Let's get into it. Cheers. She Who Became the Sun, I thought was a fantasy. It was based on like historical China. By the time that I got to the end of book 2, I realized it's a fantastical retelling of the rise of Imperial China. I think it's the Ming Dynasty is what it's fictionalizing. I honestly can't summarize it very well because it's a very good sweeping epic that has a lot of play to it in terms of the idea of what does it mean to have personhood and what does it mean to have destiny, and a lot of like literally manifest destiny in that you're manifesting your own destiny. You're going, I want this so hard that I believe that heaven itself wants that for me too, and moving on from there. And that's the main character's whole thing. Just complete like whatever the opposite of imposter syndrome, that's what our girl has, but also not, and also trans representation without being not trans representation, and also disability representation. It goes the best summary that I can give for how the main character is that she is born and told that she has no future, she has no destiny, and then makes that real because like bandits come and like destroy her whole village, Mulan style, and her brother dies, so she just pretends to be a boy. Specifically pretends to be her brother and goes on from there. And despite the fact that in her head, and I'm using she, her pronouns because she refers to herself as she, her, everyone else perceives her as boy, and she's like, nah, I think I'm like a man, but like in a girl way. But you don't need to know that. You don't need to know I ain't got no sword packing down below my waist. You just have to live with the fact that I'm better than you in every way, shape, and form. Honestly, such vibes. Like, the amount of her weaponizing other people's perception of gender, it goes hard. I believe I read the second book a couple of weeks later, and I will get into talking about that because she also like has the best foil in the form of a guy who is a eunuch who really resents that fact, who is outrageously beautiful and an asshole about it. Oh, they got their fucking drum out again. Maybe I don't have the willpower for this. I want to break in and like break that thing. Anyway, I'm going to choose to move on. June 5th, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I rated it 3 stars. It is a really fun audiobook because they have someone who's actually... One second. I also have the heating on, and that's a sound that I can control. It's Only Good Indians is it's a horror story that is entirely about Native American populations and the interplay of like traditional values and modern values. It was really good. I just kind of wished it was more horrifying and that the murders were more played up. It wasn't even like a real systemic horror kind of situation. It was good. And that's why I rated it 3 stars. Like, it was a good read. Probably like 3.25, 3.5 if I'm really honest with myself. Because it was well written and it is sitting in my mind. But like the particulars of what happened, I kind of struggled to summarize. June 9th, Holy Terror by Margaret Owen. 5 stars. It is the 3rd book in conclusion to the Little Thieves trilogy. I could not possibly recommend this series higher. It is so good that when I found a copy of the first book, because I didn't realize I didn't have a copy of the first book, I sat down and reread it. In the time that it took for me to stop filming this last weekend and get back to you now, I reread the first book in this series, and I'm being reminded of how much I just love it. I'm basing an entire D&D campaign around part of how their world is structured. If you liked Tamora Pierce, you need to read this. If you liked Percy Jackson growing up, you need to read this. Like, that really specific style of sardonic humor in the middle of like good vibes, good characterization, fun. It made me cry like a lot, several times. The way that the characters are written is so realistic. The way that their own like personal trauma is played with is so realistic, but like it's never too much. Like, I never got to a point in it where I needed to put it down because I couldn't handle it. I read The Bell Jar later. That gave me that feeling. This is just, it feels like you're watching your own inner child get healed. And it's hilarious. And there's also like illustrations and woodcuts in it. This is one of the, I read a lot of audiobooks mostly. It's how I read as much as I do. I really recommend the physical copy of this because it's so beautiful. Here. Like, oh my god. She's gorgeous. The Daughter of Fortune and Death. You get these beautiful woodcuts. Yeah, here's just like another like woodcut. This thing is like chocked full of them. You have good romance. You've got amazing humor. It's a clear-cut fantasy. The first book is very much based on The Goose Girl, which is a really good fairy tale if you've never like listened to it or read it. And I'm trying to like figure out a way to be concise about summarizing it, but I can't be concise about summarizing it. All I can do is tell you, you need to read this series because I need to have more people to talk to about it. I can do a whole video later just dissecting these goddamn books, but like you have to read them. It's between you and me. If you've made it this far, you're promising me that you're gonna read this series. Do you promise? I'm begging you. Promise me this. Use book 2, by the way. It's called Painted Devils. It's so pretty. It's just pretty. It's just pretty. Like, damn, girl. Like, that's so lovely. Why does she have these things branching out of her back? Oh, wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you like to read it and find out why that's really heartbreaking symbolism? Wouldn't you love to know? I mean, come on, girl. Moving on. I need to move on. June 11th, The Witches of New York by Amy McKay. 3 stars. I think I just don't like there's a lot of historical fiction that I don't love a huge amount. It's fine. It's good and it's fine. Um, it plays with gender and sexuality in the middle of like, I think it's like 1800s New York. Um, Feminism, three witches. I think there's like a murder mystery in there. Religious horror, that comes in there. Just a little bit too dry for me. A little bit too dry. I like a little more bite in. I need either my characters to be a little more lovable, and like connected to each other, or I need there to be more horror, or I need there to be more humor. That I need it punched up in some kind of way. Good book. Not sure who I'd recommend it to. It's a good book though. June 17th, The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. 4 stars. Do you know how often we get books that are about Arthurian legend? Not often. If you want to talk about a historical novel that plays up the like really lovable characters and a lot of good humor, this is the book I recommend. There's not a lot. The only other book that I can really think of, there are 2 other books that I can think of that really play with Arthurian legend, and that is the Raven Boys, the Raven Cycle Boys. They do that a lot, but it's modern day, and same for the Legendborn series, but it's modern day. There's like the Mist of Avalon from back in the day. I think this is pretty close to the Mist of Avalon in terms of just like that very specific like mythologizing, like the way that the prose is written. It reads like Arthurian legend. It's very specific kind of style. If you've ever read like Song of Achilles, you know what I mean. If you ever read, nope, those are the 2 examples that I have. It's just, if you've ever read these other books, I recommend, like a Daughter of the Moon Goddess. There was a really specific style to this like retelling of an old legend, and The Bright Sword hits one of those. It takes place, like, it's very much, this is an Arthurian legend, but it takes place after Arthur has disappeared. It takes place, like either a couple of years or like a decade after the heights of the Round Table have come and gone. And all that we have left is the absolute dregs, the bottom of the barrel. And the main character is this guy who's like, no, I want to be a knight. I want a bright young thing, and I want to be an Arthurian legend knight. And I want to join the Round Table. And it's like, sorry, baby, that ship sailed a while ago, but you can do your best. And it does a really fun job of playing with the unreality of Arthurian legend as a whole, because it takes place in this Arthurian legends were made up for a very long time, over hundreds and hundreds of years. Like, it's editor me. Instead of letting you watch 1.5 minutes of me trying to examine a single point, I'm going to summarize it for you right now. There was a point in time for several hundred years where Arthurian canon was simply added onto. People were not remixing the legend that already existed. They were adding new elements and facets to it. Lancelot was an OC, Sir Gawain was an OC. I feel like Tristan and Isolde were also OCs, but like, it's the continuation of writing more of a legend rather than just making up things and reinterpreting it, which is what we do these days mostly. And honestly, I would like to consider this the newest entry into Arthurian legend of that time period. Instead of just like, this is a modern day retelling, or this is a modern interpretation, or it's the modern day and we're interpreting things from the past and like dealing with them, like Legendborn. This is instead, nope, we are in Camelot right now, and this is what happens after these events. And it's like, sick. 4 stars. 4.2. June 24th. He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chen. I think I did like 4 or 5 stars? No, 5 stars. It's the follow-up to She Who Became the Sun. It's just the other half of that. They're both fucking phenomenal, and I think I like the second one like mildly more because we already knew all the characters and we could just play with them. I love a good for her story. I just do. The ending climax is absolutely phenomenal because you know that we're gonna have like a dynasty, but we do have 2 assigned female at birth characters who are married to each other at the end, and it's like, okay, that's gonna be the emperor and the empress, but we know we get a dynasty, so how does that happen? And man, would love to tell you, it's very good and very fun. Also, just like the doomed yaoi of it all. I cannot recommend this duology more. It's it's not even fun. Fun isn't the right word for it. If you thought that Babel was a little bit too much for you, this will do. This will do. I need to read the Poppy War trilogy next year, and maybe I'll be able to compare it to that. But like for now, give it a go. June 26th, A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. 5 stars. Speculative fiction about a future where we're all like very environmentally friendly again, finally, and the main character is a non-binary, essentially like a story merchant, like a traveling therapist. It's like the best way to phrase it. And robots have existed for a while and have their own like level of sentience and community, but they excised themselves from humanity like a while ago. So this traveling therapist essentially, I don't remember why, but like, and like kind of goes looking for him and ends up like meeting a robot in the middle of the wild, and you get this beautiful, it's a very short book, and so the crux of it is talking about what it means to be human and personhood, and it's a very sweet, heartfelt, philosophical study. I recommend. It's short. It's too short for you not to read it, honestly. June 27th, Circe by Madeline Miller. 5 stars. Fun fact about this book is it was the first one that my book club read. We convened for the first time in response to reading Circe. Why did we read Circe? Because I was one who suggested it, because I had a physical copy of it and no one else had anything else. It's a reinterpretation of the story of the character of the Greek figure Circe. It's a meandering mythology tale. It's got that same cadence I just talked about. Going from her birth to the end of her immortality is the best way for me to phrase it. It goes through, well, we know that she would have been siblings with these characters, so let's put her in those stories. She meets Daedalus, she meets the Minotaur, she meets Odysseus. Of course she meets Odysseus. She is the one who made the sea monster Scylla, and like, what would it look like to be a stationary fixed point for mortals to interact with? It reminds me of Frieren Beyond Journey's End in a weird way. It specifically the character of Frieren, the way that she's constantly interacting with mortals. Circe does the same thing, but she doesn't have a choice in the matter because people just come to her, and she's just like that. My hot take is that I actually prefer it to Song of Achilles, and I really recommend it. If you want a good piece of feminist literature, this is your go-to. If you want just some Greek mythology goodness and you've grown out of the Percy Jackson books, I would read this. Percy Jackson is still good. Except what I said though. Highly recommend. I'm gonna kill those children. God, I hope you can't hear that very well. Oh yeah, fun fact. June 29th, Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I had never actually read the book until now, which is why I'm able to have the opinion of, no, I prefer Circe. Song of Achilles is good though. It's good. I get it. I get the hype. I do. It's the story of the Greek hero Achilles from the point of view of his famous lover Patroclus, and how they grew up together, and how they just kind of intertwine, and what it is like to be like two strawberries that are growing together forever, and you can't have one without the other, and heroism and arrogance and hubris, and just talking about all of that, because you know how the story is going to end, because their story is like 3,000 years old now. If you walk into Song of Achilles and you don't know that Patroclus is dead by the end, you're the idiot, and that is your fault if you're hurt by it, or shocked by it is maybe the better way to phrase it. Good story though. There's a reason why people recommend it so highly. 4 stars. It's good. July 3rd. Divine Right, a World Conquest Isekai by J.B. Simmons. 3 stars. There's a new up and coming genre of lit RPGs, which are I'm still not like convinced that I know for sure what the genre, what that actually means, but it feels like you're reading a webtoon or a manga or a manhwa of someone who got isekai into another world, and it's just a power fantasy, but in an entire book. That's what it is. It's schlock, but it's fun. It's schlock and it's fun, and you won't learn anything by it, and you won't like be a better person for it. But it's fun, and sometimes that's all we need. Sometimes you just want to put Dragon Ball on in the background and go for it, but sometimes you want that but in a book form. That's what this is. That's what the entire genre is. If you tell me to read Dungeon Crawler Carl, I'll understand and I need to get around to it, but this is not that. It's a different, probably worse isekai novel. July 4th, Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. 5 stars. Holy shit. There is one thing that I hate, and that is when men are right. And when I say men, I mean every single, like, the people who say that this is their favorite book they're such red flag people. It's usually these dude bros who are so annoying and they want to be like Anthony Bourdain, but they don't have the integrity to do so, or the drug addiction. Kitchen Confidential was his memoir that he released in, I think it's like 2003 or like 98. Like that kind of, I think it's like maybe before that. It's like just before, well, like 9/11 kind of dealio. He is a bitchy, angry chef in New York telling his story of like, this is what it's like. And it's so iconic, and it turns out it's iconic for good reason. I actually really do recommend it. Unfortunately, the boys are right on this one, and I have to deal with that shame. I do recommend it. It's a very good book. The best chapter in it is, because the chapters are all very different. It's a memoir, and it's not structured like your average story. Instead, I swear to God, I thought there was a face in the window. There was not. The best like chapter in it is him just walking you through his day. It starts at like 5 a.m. with a cigarette at 5:05, and it goes to like 1 a.m. of him having his last cigarette and his last beer after last call. And the best portion of that being around noon in the height of the lunch rush, where someone calls and calls the restaurant to talk to him and starts wasting his time, and he just wastes it right back, yells in the man's face, and slams the phone down. Anthony Bourdain is an icon, and the world lost some color to it when that man died. I really recommend this book. The boys are right. You really should read it. It's really good. July 6th, Wooing the Witch Queen by Stephanie Burgess. 4 stars. It's a cute romantasy when you have an evil witch queen and you have a prince from a kingdom that hates her, who essentially like manages to escape his kingdom and kind of falls into being in the same place as her, and he is hired by her because she thinks he's like a super powerful warlock. He is not. He's just a guy who likes reading a lot, and the two of them slowly fall in love, and there's like a tiny bit of politics to it. I mean, unsurprisingly, it's 2 rival nations. There's gonna be some politics to it, but it's good. It's cute. It's sweet. I like it. 4 stars. Also July 6th is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. 5 stars. This is another one of those books that gets recommended all the time. This is the best version of unreliable narrator I think I maybe have ever read, because the plot synopsis for it is you have a white woman who is a unsuccessful author who really is jealous of the fact that she has a friend who is East Asian, who is specifically Chinese, who is a successful author, and who's also a pretentious bitch who, as we take our time over the course of the book, we do find out, oh, she sucks, but in her own way. The girl dies of a really freak accident while the main character's in the room. And so the main character calls the ambulance for her, obviously, and also steals her just finished manuscript, edits it, and then publishes it under her own name. And it's like the entire book is, when you do bad things, there's consequences for it. Consequences, the book. And that's what this is. And it's a white woman in yellowface. That's the point. Profiting off of the work of a minority. And even at the best of times of her explaining her rationale and explaining why she thinks that she deserves to be able to do this, it doesn't take long to go, wait, no, you suck. You suck fat balls. I forgot you're the worst. And that's the entire book. The minute you feel even kind of bad for her, she says something and you're like, oh, that's right, I forgot. You're the villain. You're the bad guy. The ending is a little bit lackluster, but it's just if you need to just take someone and go, okay, so this is what an unreliable narrator is. I need you to read this so you can get it in your brain so that you can just read books better to understand what it means for the main character to be an antagonist. Good book for it. So hilariously, we have a big jump in time because at that point I had read, it looks like 5 books in the first 6 days of July, and I went, cool. I now have the space to be able to finally tackle Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, which is a book that is over 1,300 pages. The thing is a fucking tome. It is the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive series, and I rated it 3 stars. But the reason for that, to be 100% fair, is this 1,300 pages, and the whole thing takes place over the course of a week. To also be fair, the reason for that makes sense, and the length actually makes sense, because you essentially have 3 different novels taking place at the exact same time, and they're just in one book, and then between the different chapters for each of these different books, you'll get I think 5 novellas. So to be fair, I really enjoyed it. There's some really, really good bits to it. I genuinely cannot summarize Stormlight Archives enough to be able to talk about this. Me talking about why I only rated it 3 stars, and a low 3 stars at that, is just due to structural reasons and pure respect. Respect for the game. Really enjoy it. Can't wait for the next book to come out. I'm just explaining myself to the Cosmerians out there. I don't need to explain myself any more than that. I do need to explain that if you don't like the character of Shalon Devar, you're wrong, and you're just a man who hates women. And Navani and Yasna are also the best. There's so many good female characters. It really sucks that it's written by a Mormon who tithes to the Mormon church. So I can only read these with the library because otherwise I couldn't stomach it because of the whole, they suck politically. And it's a whole thing. Anyway, I struggle recommending Brandon Sanderson, but man, I do enjoy it. Man, I enjoy it. July 25th. So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. 2 stars. I wanted it to be better. 2 chicks are turned into vampires and they go on a road trip about it. The characters are all kind of one of the main characters is a stick in the mud and super boring. The other main character is a pretty girl who sucks balls, and then there's romance in it that doesn't need to be in it, and it's not very well done either. I don't even know why I rated it 2 stars, because I'm trying to remember the plot details to it, and I'm coming up kind of short. I think I liked aspects of it enough to rate it 2 stars, not 1 star. I don't hate it. I just don't recommend it. July 30th, Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor. 3 stars. My mom is a speech and language pathologist, and so she really recommended this to me, and I'm glad that I read it. It's a interesting nonfiction book about essentially how if you aren't breathing correctly, it does genuinely mess up everything else about you. It talks about how it does the same thing that Everything is Tuberculosis does, which is frame it in the author's lived experience, and then also by talking about historical aspects and other people's lived experiences. It talks about how sleep apnea can ruin your life if you don't get it taken care of. It talks about why breathing through your nose is better. It talks about different meditation practices and different exercise practices that just by affecting the way that you breathe does make you healthier and make you better. I think the only reason that pissed me off enough to knock it down from 4 stars to 3 stars is because it, at the end, essentially, those guys who talk about mewing and putting your tongue in the right place and that whole thing. And so they're on to something. It's actually not a terrible idea, and that's why it fucking bothers me. Because there's a handful of manosphere bullshit where it's no, it's valid. But they suck so much that I can't endorse it. I can't tell you to read it. 3 stars. July 31st, Medium Raw, a love letter. No, that's not what it's called. Medium Raw, a bloody Valentine to the world of to the world of food and the people who cook by Anthony Bourdain. 4 stars, I think. 3 stars. It was 3 stars. It is essentially the follow-up memoir from Kitchen Confidential, written by Anthony Bourdain, where he goes, hey, so turns out my best-selling memoir has turned me into a hypocrite, and a lot of the people that I talked about in that book, turns out they're actually pretty cool, and I've gotten a lot of opportunities because of it. So here's an entire book where I kind of need to walk back a lot of the things that I said because I was kind of a dick for no reason. And I fuck with that. But it's just not as memorable, and it's not as fun. It's still interesting, and it's still good. Yeah. Perfectly good book. Perfectly good. I didn't do the stats for June. That's my bad. So in June, I read 9 books with an average page count of 435.66666, an average rating of 4.22. Pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. No books DNF'd. Following that up into July, I read 8 books, and with an average page count of 428. You would think it'd be higher because of that one Brandon Sanderson book, but one outlier is not enough when everything else was under 400 pages. Most of what I read in July was hovering around 300. So even then, it still bumped up the average by a significant degree. I should probably see what the median is, but I'm not going to do that. Just for fun. No books DNF'd. Average rating, 3.5. Moving into the next month, August, where I read 11 books. Let's get into it. August 3rd, Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. 4 stars. Oh, it's the follow-up to Ninth House. I have memory. I can think of things. I'm very good. It concludes the story. It is a dark academia, and stuff happens in it. And I don't remember what. I must have really enjoyed it, considering that star rating. Or at least enjoyed it enough. Wow, I don't remember any of the actual events. Wow, I guess I can't recommend it. Recommend Ninth House, though, so I guess I, by the law of proxy, do recommend Hellbent. Sorry. Also, August 3rd, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. 5 stars. I read it in one sitting because that was my travel day to go home and visit my parents in the States. And I grabbed it. We were reading it for book club. So I was reading it. I grabbed it and I got on the tube for it, started reading it. And by the time, like before the plane even touched down, I finished reading it. It's not a long book. I do recommend it though. It's very sweet. I was talking about lit RPGs. This is literally it's the aftermath to a D&D campaign, basically, where someone, like a former barbarian, she retires and settles down in the big city to open up a coffee shop and have a coffee shop romance and make friends and found family. And it's so cute. And one of the main characters is a little ratkin, like a mouse guy, whose name is Thimble, who's a baker. You can't get much cuter than that. And if you do the audiobook, then the author is the one who reads it. It's just good and sweet. It's a quick one. August 15th, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. Again, with the big jumps in time period. 3 stars. It's a romantasy that I've seen recommended a million times with I don't even remember why I've seen it get recommended. It has a mildly interesting... Actually, let me rephrase that. I don't think that the magic system is particularly interesting. What I do think it is unique. And that's not necessarily better, but it is true. All the magic is either in the form of this mysterious mist that will make you go crazy, and people getting ill from it, and then getting superpowers because of it, but then being persecuted against because of the superpowers. That's nothing new. I've read that one before. But on top of that, also, the one kind of okay magic is one that is like limited to the nobility, and it specifically is these playing cards that are like tarot cards. So and there's a set amount of each one, where each of these different cards have different powers associated with them. Like, one of them makes you look outrageously beautiful and useful and lovely, with the drawback that the longer that you use it, the more heartless and cold you become. Just for example. And the main character is like a former sick. I'm like doing my best. I'm so sorry. It's such a popular book that I'm like, I feel the need to actually describe it. She was sick as a kid, so she's like secretly one of the superpower people, but she's not supposed to be, because everyone who gets superpowers is meant to be killed, but she wasn't, and is part of like a noble family, and she accidentally is able to like absorb these playing cards, these magic playing cards, and so she's also got literally schizophrenia, because she literally has another, like, she quite literally has another personality inside of her, this mysterious being who was tied to the magical playing card that she ate as a child, basically. And she meets a guy, and they fall in love, and he's obsessed with her. I don't care. And she's like recruited to join the secret task force to find all of the magical playing cards. I don't get the hype. I don't get why it was so well liked. I really don't. I just don't. August 17th, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. 4 stars. Another vampire book. Another vampire book with toxic lesbians. This was V.E. Schwab's release for this year. I loved it. It is... I think it's not as good as it could have been, but I struggle to put a finger on why that'd be the case. I think it was all just a little bit too flowery without quite enough bite to it. 3 perspectives of, it isn't even 3, it's at least 2 perspectives of women throughout history. One in modern day who definitely just got turned into a vampire last night after having lesbian sex with a hot lesbian. And she got turned into a vampire by accident, and is dealing with the ramifications of that and trying to figure out what to do about it and what to do with her new hunger, versus, like, I think starting in like 800 AD, like pretty, like a while ago, an entirely other woman's perspective and how she came into being a vampire, and is honestly a really, like, she's very much a Carmilla figure, both in terms of being a toxic lesbian vampire, and also just, she's kind of unrepentantly evil, even when she is taught by force how to be a better person and how to treat humans better as a rule, even as just a food source. She still sucks, and she's awful, and I love her for that. If you like women who are terrible, I really recommend this book. If you like lesbians, I really recommend this book. If you want mild deconstruction on the idea of what it is to be a woman and what it means to have power, read it. If you liked The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, but you want more women in it, here you go. On August 18th, I read 2 books by Shauna McGuire, Down Among the Sticks and Bones and In an Absent Dream. Both are 5 stars. Both are super short. They're both like 200 pages in total. And she has an entire series called Every Heart a Doorway, but anyone who has actually read it just call it the Wayward Children series. Essentially, they're meant to answer the question of what would happen realistically to the Pevensey children, mentally speaking, coming back after doing their whole Narnia stint. What is that like? What does that do to a person? How do you feel? And going, cool. And these are their stories. These are both... the whole series is mostly standalone novels, with a couple that are follow-ups to previous novels. I'm pretty sure Down Among the Sticks and Bones is effectively a prequel to that, and In an Absent Dream is the same. One of them is, vampires again. Has 2 girls, which is unusual. Both of them got stolen away to another world. They're sisters, and they both went to the same world. And in this case, it's the follow-up to it's a follow-up one. They went to like an evil land where there's like a vampire lord, and then there's like a mad scientist, and one went to the mad scientist, one went to the vampire lord, and shenanigans ensue. And then they get back to our real world and manage to get back. And I'm doing a piss poor job of explaining it because I adore these books, and it seems to be the case. The more you like something, the harder it is to put a word on why. But if you want an entire series where it's mostly like easy 95% female main characters anyway, where you can believe exactly why each of these kids would be spirited away. For bullying, usually bullying of different reasons, like a difference of ability, a difference of intellect, a difference in sexuality. And then sometimes just pure, this is a little nerd who gets lost in her books, so why wouldn't she get lost in the woods kind of dealio. And then like 1 or 2 cases of just straight up abuse. And if you were the kind of person where you grew up waiting for your Hogwarts letter, if you always thought that like you would want to be taken away by the Doctor in his TARDIS, like kind of deal, it'll scratch that itch. It'll scratch that itch real well. And you'll love it, and it's just sweet, and it's good. Each of the books are really short, so why wouldn't you read them? Speaking of which, August 19th, I read Magic Steps by Tamora Pierce. 5 stars. It's the first book in the sequel series to a book series, a quartet called The Magic Circle. And it's pure fantasy, but the magic system in this world has a whole thing about being connected to craft and what you do. So like the 4 main characters of the whole series, you have one who is a weaver, even though she's a noble, so she can't really do that. You have a stitch witch. You have one who's a plant mage, even though he's a thief and a little street rat. You have one who is a weather mage, even though she's a merchant. And you have one who is a smith mage, even though she is essentially from
people who are analogous to travelers, but also have a cultural thing about not being allowed to make things. It's fantasy. The follow-up series, you then get a kid who does his magic through dance, you get someone who does their magic through rocks.
One does his magic through glass blowing, and then the last one was carpentry and cooking. Cute. It honestly, reading the series it's part of what made me get into learning how to do my own weaving, how to do my own knitting and embroidery and all that nonsense. Learning how to spin wool. I still want to learn how to make glass because of the series. I just haven't done it yet. Tamora Pierce is a gift, and I have an entire shelf on my bookshelf that's dedicated to her work. Oh, like for example, I just managed to acquire a copy of that. All of the books are also so old that like they're largely out of print. It's cute. Like again, they're real short. There's no reason not to read it and enjoy it. I tend to reread at minimum 1 to 8 of her books like every year. They sit with that much comfort in my heart. Speaking of comfort, fun fact, I read another Shauna Maguire book from that same series after finishing reading that Tamora Pierce book. August 21st, Comes Tumbling Down by Shauna Maguire. 5 stars. It's a really good series. What can I say? August was a time of making myself feel good, apparently. On August 24th, I read my next book club book, which was The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. 5 stars. It's a sci-fi book where it's all found family. If you like Firefly, congratulations, you'll like this. If you of people, it's a very good ensemble cast where you're looking at every member of this traveling space flight from each of their perspectives. Like you have a curmudgeonly asshole whose job it is to grow all their plants. You have a well-meaning but maybe too much of a pacifist Nathan Fillion type who is the captain, and he's great. You have a character who looks and sounds like Oh, the one that everyone loves, the one with the K. Her. Sorry. She's also in here. Definitely not related. And you also get like a lizard person. You also get an amorphous blob person. You also get someone who is like a kind of creepy looking sloth person. It's just, again, with the heartwarming found family tropes. I fuck with it so hard. Can't really recommend it. I devoured the rest of the series this year. August 26th, I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Also a liar. That was Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherland. It's the sequel to the Encyclopedia of Fairies. Sorry for repeating myself. Also, it's still good. August 28th, I read A Close and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. 3 stars this time. It's the sequel to Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. It's good. But it's just good. It's a split perspective this time between a android who is an AI program who was designed for spaceships, who is given an android body, and she kind of wishes that she weren't. She doesn't like it very much, and just talking about her lived experience versus the person who adopted her and like is helping her exist, and how she is like a made AI insofar as the fact that she was born to be a clone and a slave to be an amazing engineer, but she was always kind of made to be disposable, and managed to escape that situation. And just seeing the difference in lived experience, and how you can have very disparate things happen to you that have, and still be kind to one another. It's, the whole series is just feel good. This just isn't my favorite one. That will bring us to the end of August. Again, I read 11 books, but all of them pretty short, and so the average page count was only 347. No books DNF'd. Good job, me. September, I read another 11 books, and I'll give you a hint. There's a higher average page count this time. September 1st, 1989.
Dear Diary.
Sorry, Heathers. Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. 2 stars. I read the Atlas 6 and the sequel to that. I don't think I ever got around to finishing the Atlas 6 series. Gifted and Talented it feels like it takes place in the same universe, and that everyone kind of has magic, but not really. Again, with unreliable narrators. If you want Succession, but bad and more introspective, here you go. 5 asshole kids of a rich asshole debating who gets what because he died. There's representation for polyamory in it, and it's not bad, but the characters are all assholes, so of course it's bad, and also that's just polyamory in it. I've been there. It's just like almost good, but it's just the whole thing is just internal family politics, and they all suck so much, and no one is good enough. Like, it's even done in like a second person narrative version. It's like Olivia Blake read Harrow the Ninth and wanted to do that, but the difference is we meet the narrator and she joins the story in this one, and she really shouldn't have. The narrator, like all of the gravitas that she had is kind of stripped away. The big mystery of why she was absent is kind of horseshit. And it wants really bad to be clever and poetic and to have like a yellow face moment, but it's just not that. It's just not that. I don't really recommend it. On the other hand, though, I read on September 5th, I finished reading Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann. 4 stars. Who would have known? A lot of people, actually. It's a very popular book. It's a true crime novel about the murders of Osage County, which is another wild deep dive into the messed up politics of how Americans have treated our native population. And it also ties into the founding of the FBI. The first, I'd say, like 20% of the book kind of sucks, I'll be honest. If only because it's just not formatted very well. It starts talking about these murders and how this whole terrible conspiracy starts up. And then it drops like a fact of like, okay, cool, it's been 20 years now. And you're like, oh my God, what? I thought it had been like a month, the way that you were phrasing these things, but it's been much longer than that. And so because a fifth of the book sucks, it's 4 stars for me. I just knocked down.
Truly, thank you so much for being here and watching all the way through on this horrible deep dive into all the books that I read this year. So as a slideshow plays of just the screenshots that I took for the covers of all the books that I used as assets to, make this video, here are the actual stats from, because I couldn't actually include stats that I recorded, because obviously they changed because I read one more book over the course of the year. I know that there are certain blind spots in terms of both my understanding of the world and the books that I read, and I do want to try and eliminate those as much as I can as I continue to grow older and grow as a person. But all things considered, I don't think I do that badly, and considering what a travesty of a world that we live in the first place, I also don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to enjoy the
they are
books that we
continuing
read
in that
and to
the
take
magical
pleasure in
nature
what we do with
of
our
the
free time.
round table means
No
that
free
the
time that is
descendants
enjoyed
of
is
the
free time
different
that is
knights
wasted.
can call
And I
upon
really
their
stand by
power
that.
if
Don't super
they
trust me
are
on that though, because I am also the kind of
the
person
one who has the
where
blood
I
right
do feel the
to wield
need
it,
to be
essentially.
crocheting or
There's
knitting
demons,
while I'm listening to an
there's
audiobook.
magic, there's
So
sword fighting, it's fun.
actually maybe I'm
But
not the best
unfortunately,
person to ask
all
about
those
that, because
characters are white, and our
downtime
main
isn't
character
really
is
a
a
thing
black
for me.
girl.
Even my hobbies
And
are
it
work technically.
does not
Speaking of
shy
which, my goal for
away
next year
from
is
talking
absolutely
about
to
how
make a scarf or a
fucked up
blanket
that ended up being.
that is reflective of the
This
books
is one
that
of those
I'm
books where
reading
I
as I
feel
continue to
like
read
it
them.
could pretty easily have aged
I
up
have
to be
already,
for
because
a
I'm
emerging
I'm
adult
recording
series,
this on the
but I
15th of
understand that the author
January.
kept it at like
It's
15,
taken me a
16 year
while
old
to
time
do
range
this.
to keep it for
I
a
cut
middle school and
down
high school
about an
audience,
hour
and
and
that's
a
probably
half
for the
of
best,
extra
just
footage,
because
and
the
this
lessons
video is
that
still going to
are
clock in at
being
around
preached
3
in it
hours.
are for the
So
best for either
I did
white
my
people
best
or
to edit
for
myself
kids.
and to speed
in
up
the
where I
middle of
could,
all
but
this
obviously I didn't do
magic
that
of the round
amazing of a
table, you
job.
also
If you like
get
the work that I've done, then
very
I highly
specifically
recommend subscribing to me on
African-American
Patreon so I can
magic at the
spend
same
less time
time.
at my day
And
job and
so
more
it's
time
the whole
recording and uploading
in the
videos
middle
and
of
talking
a
analysis
very
and all that
cool
nonsense. If you don't like it,
traditional YA
tell me why
fantasy
and send me death
situation,
threats, I
you
guess.
also
Because what
get a
else are you going to do with your free
genuine
time, huh?
like amount
Something
of
worthwhile?
insight
Something good with your life?
into
God,
personal
I hope so.
politics and racial dynamic in
I've
modern
dyed
day
my hair 2
America.
more times
And
since the
it's
beginning of
kind
this
of
video.
hard not to adore
But
that
I
for
love
what it
you
is.
and I appreciate you.
It
And I hope
is
you have a
kind of
good
hard to read on
2026.
occasion because of it, but you can't ignore it. September 10th, I read Emily Wilde. It's like Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. 5 stars. It's the end of the trilogy, of the Emily Wilde trilogy. This time it means we have spent a lot of time in the realm of fairy itself. It's dealing with the conclusion to the issues that came up of the main character and her love interesting. A really, really good conclusion. I felt that the second book dipped a little bit, but the third book is phenomenal. It's a really good, concise trilogy of a adult fantasy in the truest way. There's no smut. There's nothing explicit that ever shows up in any of these 3 books. Instead, it's just good, wholesome fun and made for an older audience. On the other hand, on September 12th, I finished I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. I rated it 3 stars in my spreadsheet, but in retrospect, it's like a 2-star. Lesbian mystery with teenagers. And again, all the characters suck. And a lot of the writing is just not very good. Bisexuality is in here, so are lesbians, but it is... you want a good lesbian romance, you want a good lesbian story. I have other queer stories in this list. I Kissed Shara Wheeler is just not very good. Don't read it. On September 13th, I read Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers, the 3rd book in the Long Way to Small Angry Planet series. And it... 4 stars. 4 stars. Just, again, not as good as the first book, but another found family in space situation, and talking about how culture would change inherently as humans disperse into the wider universe, and what it looks like to be interacting with other alien species, and how having an insular culture is necessary to preserve your own history while still being welcoming of other people wanting to join your culture and learn your history. It's interesting. And again, I think Becky Chambers is just like a new favorite author. She's just brilliant. Her work is all just really lovely and heartfelt and well executed. Oh, September 16th, I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. 2 stars. This was almost a DNF. I've been way too generous in my star ratings in retrospect. A lot of these are just not that good. I rated it 2 stars. I'm bumping it down to 1 actually. It's a historical romance that is based off of Romeo and Juliet, but as turf war between Chinese folks and Russian folks in, I believe it's meant to be Beijing. It's either Beijing or Hong Kong. And it's taking place in the 1920s. And there are bits and bobs to it which are fine. It's cool to read Juliet as a mob boss leader, essentially. We have a bit of random trans representation in the form of Rosaline, and then like an extra third character who I think is meant to be like the nurse, because there's no reason that she would have an actual nurse. Romeo's Benvolio and Mercutio are absolutely dating behind the scenes, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, that's great. And there's like magical demons that are existing for some reason. And hot take, because holy shit, this one book barely gets through the first like half of Romeo and Juliet. They get to the point where Mercutio should be killed, and spoiler alert, he's fake killed. And I'm sorry, you just can't do that. You just can't do that. Just do it for real. Like, no one who's named actually dies in a book based off of Romeo and Juliet, which famously has a body count. It's just not that good. It's the prose itself is too much, and the story does not deliver, and it's bloated. If Romeo and Juliet can be sat through in 3 to 4 hours, this book should not take the 449 pages that it does to get through the first half of Romeo and Juliet. It's unnecessary, and I'm not reading the follow-up. There is a sequel. Of course there's a sequel to the other half of Romeo and Juliet, but I'm not reading it. September 22nd, I read The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. 4 stars. It's the kind of book where it reads like it should be a fantasy, and the longer that you read it, you go, oh no, this is sci-fi. Kind of in a Star Wars way, but sci-fi nonetheless, where we have a society where, oh god, how do I even explain this? I'm gonna do my best to be concise. Main character is from the fringes of society, and is considered a second class citizen, and she manages, for reasons, to be able to train to become a new librarian for this giant, like, inside of a mountain library for the city, which is sick. And honestly, I can see it existing in the Starless Sea because of that. And as she, I can really see it happening in Starless Sea. As she trains and goes from being like 11 to being an adult, she ends up meeting this one random guy in this one random room and grows up with him. And by that I mean he's time locked in one time period, and she essentially keeps popping in and out, and he watches her go from 11 to 18, which is great because they fall in love, because of course they do. And he, on the other hand, has been one of like 5 people who have been trapped inside of the library as the only people that they know, except for a couple of AIs, a couple of automatons, who have been taking care of them their entire lives. And it's one part mystery, it's one part fantasy, it's one part adventure, and then timey-wimey bullshit. And how can you not love that, honestly? Why would you not love some timey-wimey nonsense in what is a pseudo-fantasy, definitely just technology too advanced to be indistinguishable from magic style sci-fi? It's just cool. I do actually quite recommend it, because I'm doing my best to summarize it in a way that is concise enough to try and get across the fact that I do recommend it, and I'm really looking forward to reading the next one when it releases. Do it. September 25th, I reread Lioness Rampant by Tamora Pierce. 5 stars. Again, I got reminded that Tamora Pierce existed, and I did a lot of rereading of her this year, because again, I tend to reread her a lot. Lioness Rampant is the 4th book in the Lioness series, which was first released back in the 80s. It's a very 80s series of, in this magical fantasy world, there is magic and there is knights, and girls aren't allowed to be knights. And so the main character, she's twins. She's part of a fraternal twin set, so she and her brother swap places, and she trains to be a knight in hiding as a woman. And it does that, and she ends up becoming like truly legendary and absolutely incredible. Reading her will feed your imposter syndrome in the craziest way, because by the end of the book, she's like managed to overcome all these kinds of prejudices. She is undoubtedly the best swords person in the realm. She's besties and former lovers with the king, but she traveled to the other end of the world to pick up a magical jewel and then defeated a giant ape and brought home the most beautiful woman in the world to marry the king. She managed to be part of healing the rift between two different people. Like, she defeated a great sorcerer, and like all of this happens, and by the end of the book series, she's like, yeah, but I'm not all that though. I'm just not. I'm just me. And everyone else is like, girl, they're already like writing ballads about you. There's already a troubadour outside singing your praises. What do you mean you're not all that? And that's how you know it was written in the 80s and by a woman who has openly said on multiple occasions that she wrote it because she finished reading Lord of the Rings and was like, man, wish there was some more chicks in it, and that they all talk to each other like once. It also doesn't demonize being feminine, despite the fact that the main character sheds her femininity. And this comes up multiple times of her being like, I'm not ashamed to be a woman. I hate my femininity to be able to get what I wanted. I'm just not ashamed of it. And it must be said that I actually have a lot of thoughts about Tamora Pierce's work in general, and that the Lioness series is incredible in its own right. It's been lauded by both trans men and trans women as an iconic character because the main character, of course, she cross-dresses to be able to get her goals, to achieve her goals as a knight, and she very openly ends up being like, I'm not super comfortable in the realm of either man or woman. So she, like Tamora Pierce has said in retrospect, she would not unreasonably identify as gender fluid if she existed today. There are scenes in which she talks about being a man and like having to assert her masculinity versus other scenes where when she's a teenager and she starts going through puberty, she very intentionally, because she's like, I'm not gonna live as a man my entire life. She is not a man. She's not a woman who is a man. She is a girl who is achieving her goals and desires, which is a very specific line that needs to be drawn. And she has to make the decision of, no, I will eventually reveal my gender. And therefore, you get this really iconic scene that is very reminiscent, having talked to like trans friends of mine myself, of having to be taught how to be feminine, of existing with other women and them being like, you need to cross your legs, you're sitting like a man, you're manspreading. Yes, you walk like this, and there is a way that you are going to find that swaying your hips makes walking in heels easier. Here's how you do makeup. We're going to pierce your ears just for fun. That happens in the 4th book as well, which is a really fun scene by itself. But like, there's that, and then there's also scenes of learning how to be a man and how to do the normal courtly gestures in a manly way. Like, the interplay with gender, it goes crazy hard. And the fact that it was written and published in the 80s makes it wildly ahead of its time. Go to Claire's and get my ears pierced and be pretty about it. It's kind of unusual in that genre by itself, and it's a seminal piece of work for a good reason. I really recommend Tamora Pierce in general, especially because after this, I finally reread, oh god, 2 days later, September 27th, I reread Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce for 5 stars, which is the follow-up series. It takes place like 5 or 6 years later, but the main character is new, and it is a girl who talks to animals, and we move on from there, and it ends up being a brilliant series in and of its own. I am kicking myself. I have so much to say about these, and I held back. I'm choosing not to go into extreme depth, but in this case, we also have an entire war. We introduce magical creatures into the realm as a whole as opposed to just magic, which is sick, where there's a rift between the gods' realms versus the mortal realms, and so we start getting monsters in, and it means that eventually we end up having to have a debate about, well, is a thinking creature like sentient and allowed to be a bad person even if it's a monster that ostensibly can kill people? Yes, because monsters are people too, because people can be monsters. It goes so hard. Genuinely, the only problem with it is an uncomfortable difference in age in the main romance. And honestly, when I was a kid, that didn't matter. It didn't matter. I loved it. And even in retrospect, I just kind of had to go, fine, I'm okay with it because I love the characters so much. The characters are so good. If it was rewritten today, it'd probably be like a little bit different, but like, God, I want to eat more of it. Meanwhile, truly truly horrendous book. September 28th, The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. 1 star. Holy shit. I have seen this book recommended so many times, and it's god awful. It's just awful. It has a really good premise of here, there's a therapy support group for all of for women who have survived serial killers, where when you read it, you go, oh, that's Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh, that one's Scream. That one's Halloween, etc., etc., etc. Like, it does all the heavy hitters for the slasher movies from back in the day, and it's the support group of what it's like to be a final girl, and they all go to therapy together, and they all are friends and buddies, friends being a loose term, but suddenly a serial killer shows up and starts trying to pick them off again. It's terrible. One, it has crazy tone issues, where it'll do a really interesting passage that is really long and meandering about the paranoia of the main character and what having gone through what she has really done to her and ruined her psyche, and then we'll cap it off with a joke, like a series of jokes at her expense for this very long thing that we just talked about her trauma. Sorry, swallowing. So it has that going badly for it. It has a terrible, like, the number of times where it's like, oh, maybe that's the bad guy, maybe that's the villain, maybe it's this person, where by the time you get like halfway through, you're like, I think it's the main character. If I was reading it, it's a mystery in theory. So I'm like, this is reading as if it's going to be the main character is an unreliable narrator who is like gone crazy and is killing her friends. It's not. It's much worse than that. So I'm not even going to say what it is because it's really that bad. I'm not even willing to say what it is. It's not good enough to hate read it, but it definitely is. Like, people have recommended it for reasons. I don't really get the reasons they recommended it. I think they're wrong. I don't think it's good enough to be able to pull off what it's trying to. Also, the worst part about it is probably the fact that for reasonable copyright issues, the main character is the only one the movie franchise that she comes from is made of whole cloth by the author. And you can tell because it's by far the worst one, where it's like a slasher movie that happens at Christmas time, where someone dressed up as Santa Claus and like killed her and impaled her on deer antlers while she was shirtless, so her titties were out, and she was impaled on a deer antler. And God, it's like there's like casual pedophilia that happens because like she ends up hiding with her therapist for a while. Her therapist has 2 sons. One of them is explicitly stated to be like 24 or 25, and the other one's like 12. The 24, 25-year-old one reads like he's a 16-year-old in every way, but he's definitely in his 20s. That way, the main character who's like in her late 30s, early 40s, can be uncomfortably flirtatious with him and like talking about really explicit details in a way that would be really inappropriate if he was like 15 or 16, but he's written like he's 15 or 16, but just they turned the age up, like just upped the decade by 1 to make it more appropriate, which is all well and good until it turns out he's in a relationship with a 15 or 16-year-old at the same time. And it's like, cool, so we have pedophilia anyway. Why didn't you just this is going to be one of the very few times you will ever hear someone advocating for pedophilia. But honestly, with the state of arrested development of the main character, who had her horror movie happen to her when she was like 17, who has never really grown past it, and instead has been taken advantage of and is deeply traumatized, it would actually make a lot of sense if she was weirdly attracted to this guy that reminds her of the guy who tried to kill her when she was in high school. But no, instead he's in his 20s and uncomfortable, and he's still being a pedophile anyway. So what was the point? So what was the point of bumping up his age? It would have made more sense for it. Anyway, don't read this book, it sucks. Or maybe do read it and tell me if I'm wrong for thinking this. I will tell you, this was my book club book, and we read it together and sat down And it was an interesting split of like half the group was like, I think it's okay, and then the rest of us going, no, I hated it, and here's why. And by the end, I had convinced most of my fellow book club members that they also hate it. It's just not a good book. I don't recommend it. And also, if you're gonna read it, don't read the audiobook, because that's how I read it. I literally had to put it in 2.25 times speed because the woman who narrates it, I believe she played an actual final girl back in the 80s. So now she's an old woman and she reads like it. It reads so slowly that it's almost like they had to slow down her voice in the hopes that people would read it, knowing that people normally speed up their audiobooks these days. Even then, I had to double and then some the speed at which it was playing back because it was so horribly slowly narrated. So if you're gonna read it, do the physical version, but also don't read it. 1 star. That was my September, where I read, again in total, 11 books with an average rating of 3.45, which feels like it should be lower. I read enough 5-star books and then a handful of just really low ones, so it's an interesting split. But the average page count was 411. October, I read 10 books, and they were October 1st, I finished Death of the Author by Nadia Okorafor. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's 4 stars. If you want to read Yellowface, but you kind of wish that it was just about the author who isn't trying to rage bait us with her race, it's kind of what you end up getting. The main character is an author in and of herself, and in between chapters of her life and her story, you get chapters of the book that she wrote, which reminds me of something that Becky Chambers would write. But she is Nigerian. I believe so was the author. It would make no sense if she wasn't, unless someone's yellow facing again. She is Nigerian American, and it to an incredibly high degree affects both how she interacts with other people and as well as the book that she wrote herself. And she is also disabled. It's also vaguely sci-fi insofar as, actually it's not sci-fi, it's just the author gives her magic robot legs for reasons that make sense, and so you have to assume this takes place in like 2030, like just a little bit further into the future. Things are a little bit more futuristic, but mostly just to make life easy and to make it a more interesting read. It's not like, what was it? What the River Knows, where there was magical elements in that book that just didn't need to be there and didn't affect anything and weren't good. This has a couple of sci-fi elements that do actually impact the story as a whole, that are appropriate, that are very small, and it ends up being a really interesting conversation about disability and being chronically online and keeping authors out of reader spaces. Trying to think. I think it's in the Goodreads Choice Awards this year, which I don't. Yeah, I suppose it's good enough for that. I did really enjoy it. I think it's really cool. If you want, I'd really recommend it for people who want to have a better understanding of second generation immigrant experience. This is probably a good one to read. I'm also white, and so it's kind of hard to talk a lot more about it. There's a bit of romance to it, and the bit of romance to it, I think, is like surprisingly fun. It's very pragmatic romance. Like it's not these shocking moments of deep love and sacrifice. It's just two people who meet and they like each other and get to know each other over the course of years. And by the end of it, they're like, I really can't imagine spending my life with anyone else. And I think that's so much more realistic than a lot of other romances out there. Can't relate. I haven't experienced that myself. I just assume it's more realistic, and I quite liked it. There's, I think, like one moment where it's like a proper thriller. It reads like an author who has had bad experiences with the publishing industry and wants to talk about it in a book and wants to tell her own story. And I love that for her. It's really good. I can't gush about it much more than that, but a solid 4 stars, 4.2. October 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I finished reading the second, third, and fourth books in the Immortals Quartet by Tamora Pierce, which is that book series I told you about a girl who can talk to animals. They're all 5 stars. I love them all very much. They're all also very short. Please read Tamora Pierce. I adore her. October 8th, I finished reading Chain Gang All-Stars by Nanakwame Adjei-Brenyah. I believe is how you pronounce her name. I apologize if I got it off slightly. My bad. Fucking again with the toxic lesbians. I've been really into toxic lesbians this year apparently by having more than one book about toxic lesbians. In this time, it's about the prison industrial complex in a sci-fi future where it's, oh man, let's do the Hunger Games, but make it all of our death row prisoners. And man, people love it so much, and it's such a riotous sports thing that we actually are going to end up imprisoning more people, and it's going to be ridiculous, and the wealth gap disparity is going to be insane. Brother, this book broke me in so many ways. It's phenomenal. You meet so many characters who you're reading a book about PvP death matches to gain freedom. So a lot of them die, but the problem is the author wrote them so well that you're kind of hoping that they don't, but also you want the other people in the fight to live, and it goes crazy hard, and the ending broke my heart. It's exactly what you think it's gonna be if you read the back, and yet despite that, it's very Orpheus and Eurydice in that you spend the entire book being like, well, surely they'll find another way to have both of my main characters gain freedom. And by the end, the answer is, they told you exactly what was going to happen. So why are you so surprised? Really highly recommend it. Really, really highly recommend it. 5 stars. Easy 5 stars. Speaking of lesbians, October 11th, I read Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. 3 stars. Again, it's a cozy romantasy. Queen's Guard who runs away from an evil queen to shack up with her super powerful sorceress wife. And then stuff happens. But they open up a tea shop and / bookstore. Yeah, and plot also happens, but I don't remember what. Again, with the fact that if I'm rating something 2.5 to 3 stars, that's probably what it is. It's just feels good, nice to read. Can't really say much about it. It's cute. I like it. You like lesbians and you like fantasy? Read this one. October 16th, Heart of the Sun Warrior by Su Lin Tan. 3 stars. It's the follow-up to Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I just like Daughter of the Moon Goddess way more. This one is good. And again, with my summary being, stuff happens in it. I'm sorry, I do my best. It's the follow-up, so we're picking up plot threads that were not completed, and reuniting the realms, magical fantasy, good stuff. Immortals. Stuff happens, and I believe everyone lives happily ever after at the end. It's good that some of these have no spoilers in them because, man, I just don't remember a goddamn thing, do I? Okay, so here's a fun one. On October 17th, I finished reading Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake. I rated it 3 stars. Again with the lesbians. Another lesbian book. Turns out, this is actually the 4th book in a series. Not that I would know, I haven't read the previous 3, and a friend of mine who is way more into romance than I am said that she couldn't get through the first one, so she didn't bother with any of the rest. The 4th one, I liked it, and it's fun. Small town romance where you have a character who is she's an actress, a struggling actress, and the other one is a romance novelist, I believe, or something like that. And it's cute. They both get cast in the same play in a gender bent version of Much Ado About Nothing, which is great because that's the best Shakespeare play. And where the director is one of the main characters is ex, and then the other, and so they're fake dating to save her pride or something like that. Like there's something like that. And I don't know. I really did enjoy it. It's good. It's cute. It's fun. Maybe I'll read the other 3 in the series. I don't know. I liked the conclusion well enough that I don't really feel the need to. October 21st, I read The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. I rated it 3 stars. 3 stars. It's a horror book. Main character is again, second generation immigrant whose father walked out on the family, and mom invited a white guy in, who is a very Orientalist kind of bullshit. They're Korean, I believe, which is important because he keeps trying to talk Chinese to them, which is crazy. And she has to deal with, like, the main character is an unreliable narrator in and of herself, and she hates this man and other men so much that she ends up going into a psychotic break and then doing murder, and a lot of murder. It's really fun reading someone else's psychotic breakdown, I'm not gonna lie. That is a really good time, but a lot of it felt kind of repetitive, and it felt like it was trying to talk to specifically like a white man who reads too much manga, is kind of what it felt like just a very specific kind of anger and frustration with guys like that. And I've dated a couple guys like that, so I would know what that's like, and to enough of a degree. And it's worth it. I think it's worth it. I do recommend it, honestly. It's just not my favorite. I've read a decent amount of horror, and it's not my favorite one of all time, but I do quite like it. I do recommend it for what it is. October 24th, I read The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. It is the most recently published book in the series for A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I rated it 4 stars. And unlike the rest of them, this is a case where you've got a bunch of people who normally travel around in spaceships. They all stop off at a motel, basically, and then a meteor shower happens, and it disrupts everyone's ability to be able to travel off planet again. And again, with a story about personhood and what it means to respect other cultures, and found family by accident, and what it means to recognize cultural blind spots that you may have. I know that all sounds crazy, but talking about books about aliens, but it's true. This one, I think, doesn't even have any humans in it, which is a big swing if I'm right about that. I don't remember if I am. I think I might be. I might not be. There's definitely human-like. I really do recommend the entire series. It's just, all of it feels good, and none of them are crazy long. And if you do the audiobook versions of them, the audiobook narration is really lovely. Yeah, 4 stars. Ended October with 2 DNFs, both on the same day. A Lesson in Vengeance and Plain Bad Heroines. Dear God, I couldn't even tell you what either of these are about, but I know that I disliked both of them so much so quickly that I just DNF'd and moved on. So will we. So again, I read 10 books in October. I DNF'd 2. The average rating was a solid 4 stars. October was a very good month, and then the average page count was 376. November was a bit of a decline in that way. I only read 7 books in November, which is more than a lot of people read in one year, to be 100% fair. But it is what it is. And I started by DNFing The Cloisters by Katie Hayes on November 4th. I do remember why I DNF'd this one. It was sold to me as a good dark academia, and I just remember being so annoyed with the main character and waiting for it to pick up the pace even slightly, that when I realized we were only like 15% of the way in and like nothing had happened, I just cut my losses and moved on with my life. There's no need to linger over books that you don't like. Which is why I'm kind of thrilled I moved on to something a little more schlocky, a little more trash. On November 9th, I finished reading The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. 5 stars. Hi, Editor Me, it's back again. Before we move on from this point, I want to point out this cover sucks. I spend very little time talking about the aesthetic pleasure of a lot of these books, because I don't think that's necessarily fair, unless it's deceptive. Like, To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods particularly bothered me, because I loved the cover of it, and I hated the book so much. I really like Serpent and the Wings of Night. It's trash, and I quite like it. What is going on? This is so busy and messy and poorly. Who did this? 5 stars. Vampires, but no lesbians this time. Just a regular romance, and again with a shadow daddy, but in this case it's fun. You get another Hunger Games situation in that all these vampires are competing to be the last one standing to beg a wish, beg a boon from the goddess of vampires, basically. And the main character is just a little human who is like the adopted daughter of like the vampire king. And she is really fun. She's a bit of an asshole, but like not so much that it feels over the top. And she ends up making reasonable alliances with other vampires, including one that she ends up like getting feelings for, who is a more recently turned vampire, which is unusual in this world because most vampires are born, not made. Being made is a lot more risky, apparently. And so because of that, they have two very interesting different perspectives on being human, because he regrets being turned into a vampire and regrets not having access to a lot of what it was being human, and she is human and she would give anything to be a vampire, just like her father, and is trying to finish competing in order to rise up the ranks and join him as his equal, essentially. And honestly, how can we not love that? It's got a crazy ending. The ending, you want it to be a Hunger Games Peeta and Katniss moment, and I mean, it's no shock. This isn't a spoiler because you're genre savvy if you're reading this, watching this, listening to this, and so it's gonna happen. But the how of the Katniss Peeta moment, the why, and the repercussions go crazy hard. And it doesn't end. It ends on a mild cliffhanger, enough that I'm like, no, I quite desperately want to read the second book. I really recommend it. It's the first time in a while that a book talk book that is romantasy has really hit home for me in a way that was this good, I'll be honest. November 11th, I finished reading The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. 5 stars. It was a recommendation by a friend of mine who, she was so right. It is, she heard what like fan fiction I'd liked in the past, which isn't many. I don't read a lot of fan fiction. I never have. But there was like one fanfic about that I told her about, and she was like, "Oh, if you like that, you need to read The Charm Offensive, where you have it's The Bachelor, but not for copyright reasons, and The Bachelor falls in love with the wrong person." And I'm like, "Oh my god, who?" She goes, "The producer." His chief handler. The two of them fall in love, and it's really cute and sweet, and also there's a lesbian romance happening in the background. How can we not fuck with that? It's great. It's so good and sweet, and I'm really looking forward to. I really hope that a sequel will come out about the lesbian characters. I do. I really want that for myself. November 13th, I read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath for book club. I mean, easy 5 stars. Let's start there. Holy moly. I am thrilled that I did not read this when I was a teenager. I had a lot of mental health issues when I was a teenager. If I had read this when it was first recommended to me, I don't know I'd be making this video now. For reasons. The parts of it are so crazy funny for like no good reason, but then most of it is just heartbreaking. It is a classic piece of feminist literature of what it is to be a woman in America and the results of existing and withstanding the slings and arrows of fate. If you have mental health issues, maybe don't read this, actually. If you've gone through therapy for a minimum 5 years, you're allowed to read this. If you are a depressed teenager, I don't recommend it, actually. It's a seminal work for good reason. You should read it eventually. Man, I'm glad that I did not read it when I did. When I was a teen. I'm glad I read it now, because it was a hard read now. If I'd read it when I was like 17 or 18. November 18th, I finished If We Were Villains by M.R. Rio. M.R.? M.L. Rio. 4 stars. It is, again with Shakespearean stuff, it is a book that very clearly wears its influence of the secret history on its sleeve to an almost ludicrous degree. We had the split perspective of what happened 15, 20 years ago versus the main character having the point of view character having just gotten out of jail for a crime that was committed at the end of the events that are being told to us from 15 years ago. And it's good. If you like The Secret History, but you wish it was more concise and a little bit more focused on the characters as opposed to talking about the characters, you'll probably like this. If you like Dark Academia as a rule, you'll probably like this. If you like Shakespeare or miss being in university, you'll probably like this. I do recommend it. It's honestly, it's quite good. It's pretentious, but in a way that's not like overbearing. 4 stars. November 20th, I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. It's 2 stars for me. This just isn't, I'm not the correct audience for this. I say that though, having looked up the author afterwards to see how many books are meant to be in this series, I did read a couple of her books years ago when I was in high school, and I didn't like her writing style then either. So unfortunately, I need to remember this person's name so I avoid reading her again, because it's so deeply, deeply mediocre. Skewing towards bad. But clearly the woman has quite the discography to her. The Inheritance Games is meant to be, I think, Knives Out, but for kids.
Hi, Editor Chase is back again. I did, just for fun, look up when both of these things were released, and The Inheritance Games was published in 2020, and Knives Out was released in 2019. So I'm not saying nothing.
The main character is a chick who is a bit of a con artist. Like she's crazy smart, and is living to survive. Who gets called to from the Northeast to go to Texas because she's been named in the will of like the richest man alive in a house that is very clearly inspired by what is it called? Like the Windsor House, whatever it is. The one house that a crazy old rich lady like built on for years and years and years and years. That one, it's very obviously based off of.
It's the Winchester Mystery House.
That, and very obviously feels like Knives Out, because you've got a bunch of people fighting for the inheritance, and she is one of them. Like, she is the inheritor to fucking like everything at the age of 16 or something like that. And no one knows why, least of all her. She's like, no, I've never met this man in my life. I don't know why this is the case. This is all crazy. And it's like, it's mystery for babies. If you liked Knives Out and you wish that your kid liked Knives Out, give them this book. It's so deeply okay, and I'm not the audience for it. November 24th, I read Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. 5 stars. Witches in modern day England who do magic and do magic cool, and there's interpersonal political infighting because the chosen one, the opposite of the chosen one, like the Antichrist essentially, is discovered, and you deal with the internal politics of, okay, but he's just a kid. That is just a kid. You can't just deem someone evil because you think they were born wrong. It's an allegory for trans rights, and then it becomes less of an allegory and just like a 1-to-1 comparison for trans rights. Especially with being England and witches. Hoofsto. It also like comes from the back of like a giant wizarding war, essentially. Feminism, witches, prophecy, what it means to have a predestined fate, and what it means to live up to your own potential. Really, really well written and really compelling. I don't remember if it's standalone or if a sequel is coming out. I almost don't want there to be a sequel. It was really good as a standalone for what it is. I would read a sequel. I feel like it would disappoint me. I do really recommend this though. On November 29th, I read Blood Marker, Tracy Dion. 5 stars again. It is the sequel to Legendborn. Oh, everything comes in the first one, but let's make it worse and harder, and also make our kids go on the run, which, is probably the best example of why this book series might have worked better if it was aged up. I'm glad it's made for the audience that it is, but a lot of it probably would have worked better if the kids in it weren't 16, but were instead like 21, 22. Just so they could do things like legally drink, for example, and have it be believable. Like that kind of thing, that would make more sense. but it's not. Everyone's 16 or 17 or 18 years old. The old characters in it are like 26 or 3,000 years old. Yeah, it's book 2 in a series. It's hard to talk about these kinds of things without spoiling anything from book 1 when I do want you to read the series. So no, read it. Read it. So that would be November, all wrapped up. Again, read in total 7 books that month. 1 was DNF'd, an average rating of 4.29, with an average page count of 402. Moving on to the final month, December, which we are currently still in. So I don't actually, I'm going to sit down on the floor real quick and do my stats for it because of this. Hit pause and start recording again afterwards. Alright, let's finish this. December. My total books have been, let's get back to where I was, sorry. I read 10 books this month. On December 2nd, I finished reading The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I rated it 3 stars. It's another fairy tale book. I like Spinning Silver better. Same region, different fairy tale. It's fine. I don't remember a lot about it though. December 4th, I read The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. 5 stars. Oh my god. There is a very good reason why that is like considered one of like the best, like it's the haunted house book. 1. I actually can't put into words how good The Haunting of Hill House was. I read it because I watched Haunting of Hill House, the TV show, and I knew it was based on a book, so I wanted to read the book. Oh my god, the book is good. Right after that, on December 5th, I read Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. Quick little novella, very short, 5 stars though. When people call Carmilla the lesbian vampire book, I didn't realize how true that was until I read Carmilla. It is crazy levels of gay. And it's a classic for a reason. Just read it. Read both those books. Oh my god, they have a good rap for a reason. December 12th, I finished reading The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. 3 stars. Very well written mystery. Very interesting coming of age story from I think the 70s, where we also get impacts from decades prior. It's about generational trauma and womanhood, and very much is also a mystery. I'm just not much of a mystery reader. I really recommend it to like my mom, for example, who recommended to me the Killers of the Flower Moon. And if you like Killers of the Flower Moon, but you want more of a novelization and you want it to be longer and you want to watch the mystery unfold, great book to do it in. Good book for it. I'm just not much of a mystery reader, but I can recognize a very well crafted book when I read it. December 16th, for some reason I read Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. 2 stars. It's the follow-up to One Dark Window. It's just not good. It's just not a good series. I don't recommend it. I really hate when, as well, we have side characters where suddenly they're POV characters because you put the main character in a weird spot, which the author did, and so we no longer get her point of view, and instead we get the side character's point of view, and it is entirely unsurprising when they end up dating each other. Like, they just took a wall and they wrote on it and said, these two are gonna bone and you have to deal with it. It's like, sure, why wouldn't that be the case? I'm sure if I read them back to back, or if I liked the first one more, maybe that would have titillated me a little bit, but it didn't. So I just don't care for it. Speaking of didn't really care for it, December 19th, I read Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. 2 stars. I have kind of wanted to read this for a while. I like octopuses and I like the idea of a novel that centers them, but it's really flippin' annoying to have main characters who all are just not very likable and are really annoying to read. It feels like a chore trying to read through their chapters when the best character is the octopus, who we get his point of view, and he is insufferable, don't get me wrong, but he's at least insufferable in a fun way. Well, that's a bad sign. And then top it off with the fact that he ruins the mystery. Like, the mystery that comes up, this is somehow a mystery. And the crux of it is so obvious that even I could see where it was going, and I'm not much of a mystery reader for good reason, quite frankly. And that's just, I'm not good at guessing the ending, which is part of the fun of mysteries, I'm told. And instead, the octopus goes, oh my god, those two characters, answer to the mystery. And now we have another 7 to 12 chapters of watching the characters figure out the mystery, with an octopus trying to wingman it. 2 stars. December 21st, Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. 4 stars. I've wanted to read this book for quite a while. Andrew Joseph White has written a bunch of like horror novels. This one is a post-apocalyptic horror that is so freaky good. A lot of body horror to it. Taking the idea of transness and feeling monstrous in your own body and then making it literal, and in a post-apocalyptic world with pseudo-zombies and religious fanaticism. Very good. December 23rd, I read The Chore of a Book at the Turn of the Screw by Henry James. 2 stars. I figured, well, if I like The Haunting of Hill House so much, why wouldn't I read the book that The Haunting of Bly Manor is based on? And the reason is because The Turn of the Screw sucks. It's written in a time period where to tell your audience that a character is good, you must tell them that they are very, very pretty. And then the subversion to that is that the very, very pretty character is then evil or possessed by a demon. And that is the case in this book. We have 2 children who are being possessed by ghosts. And the author, or the point of view character, or both of them really, will not shut up about what pretty children they are and how adorable they are and so sweet and so good. How could they possibly be evil? And they're evil because they're possessed by ghosts. That's why.
I feel the need to walk back this statement slightly because this book is seminal for a good reason, and it is very creepy. And in retrospect, I understand that in the context of the world in which it was written, yes, beauty is equitable to goodness, and especially for the incorruptible innocence of children, that is really important when you want to violate both of those things by having them be forcibly possessed by ghosts, corrupted by adulthood well ahead of their time. I say mildly retract the statement because knowing that doesn't make it any more enjoyable of a read 150 years after its intended audience.
2 stars. Don't read it. December 26th, Trust in the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. 5 stars. I've seen this recommended about 7 billion times. Adorable. Very good. So crazy good. If you don't want to bother reading the rest of the Cosmere, don't read Trust in the Emerald Sea. There's a bunch of one-off novels. This is one of them. This is incredibly easily consumable and has a main character who, one of her like core characteristics is being sensible. And it's being read to you by a narrator who is hilarious in his own right. It's adorable and it's cute. The Emerald Sea, it's emerald because it's made out of like mold spores, and it's on a planet where there are 7 oceans, and each of the 7 oceans are different colors with different colored spores that react to water and do catastrophic things. That's so fun and creative, and it's really enjoyable. And you watch a character get out of her comfort zone. It does the opposite of, like, yes, at the end of the hero's journey, is it home that was changed, or is it you that was changed? And the main character is like, no, 100% I have changed and I'm different. Will the love of my life, will I love him anyway? And will he love me back? And the answer is yes, because he too has been changed. And it's a very sweet confluence of events in that way. It could have been very easy to make it tragic, but it's not. Instead, it's just a very good, sweet story. And then the last thing that I read, and thank God this is the last thing that I read of this year, was Little Thieves on December 28th. I finished it a couple days ago by Margaret Owen. I gushed about it earlier. I will gush about it again. It's the kind of book that had me sitting, kicking my legs, kicking my feet, and going, man, I love these characters so much. I so highly recommend it, and I can't wait to reread the rest of the series. I averaged 8.5 books a month. High fives all around. I'm 1 book short of being able to say that I averaged 2 books a week. So I think that might be my goal for next year, but I don't really want to make reading goals for next year. I feel like that'll suck the fun out of it. I've just been enjoying tracking things. My average pages were 393, roughly, with a total amount of pages read of 40,867, which is sick. I only DNF'd. My average DNF was 0.583, with a total DNFs of 7. Here is a fun stat for you. So, editor me, make sure to put this up here somewhere. I included a metric of whether or not it was written by a man. And 76.9% of the books I read this year were written by not a man, because I'm including non-binary authors in here, like Aidan Thomas. 23.1% were written by men. The genres that... So the other problem we run into is that I really broke down what genre I was actually reading. So the pie chart for the genres I've read this year is ludicrous and has way too many genres in it. Put it up right here, please. Because even then, about a quarter of all the books I read this year were straight up fantasy. But when I stopped picking at the details, 61% of the books I read this year were fantasy. With about an equal amount after that of sci-fi and horror. So actually I think my goal for next year is just me reading a little more nonfiction, because less than 5% of what I read was nonfiction. And I should probably try to increase that, at least by a little bit. The other fun graph that I made was for the authors that I read. And two that top the chart are Tamora Pierce and Naomi Novik, because I reread a bunch of Tamora Pierce, and then I read just so much of the Temeraire series that just bumped up Naomi Novik by a crazy amount. After them, Shauna Maguire was up there. Shauna Maguire and... Oh, who are you? I can't even see it. Becky Chambers. Wow, what a nightmare chart. Obviously, most authors I only read once. But then Becky Chambers and Shauna Maguire have a tie for third place technically, at having read 4 of their books. Melanie Sellier from the beginning of the year, and then Heather Fawcett, whose entire series I've read this year, Brandon Sanderson are then tied for 5th place at 3 books read this year. But most authors I only read like once, with a couple other exceptions of reading 2 of their books, like Margaret Owen and Madeline Miller. All in all, a really good year. I'm really glad that I did this. I will say next year, because I'm going to try and get this edited and posted within the first couple of days of 2026. But I think next year I'm going to just try and do an upload for a wrap-up for every month. And that way I don't have to do this, and you get more of my actual thoughts and opinions for each book as they come. But this being such a chaotic wrap-up, I think was not a terrible idea, and I'll probably try and do it again next year if I remember. If I don't get burnt out, if I don't give up on everything. And then who's to say? Maybe my background will look different again by then. But no, thank you for coming along with me on that. To be fair, I'm already working on reading a nonfiction book. I'm reading the 48 Laws of Power right now, at the same time as I'm reading the 3rd book in the Legendborn series by Tracy Deonn, which is Oathbound. And so theoretically, it's December 30th right now. Theoretically, if I stayed up all night, I could probably finish at least, not even all night, if I stayed up for like way more hours and devoted all my time to reading one of these 2 books, I could probably up this by 1 more. I'm not gonna. If I do, chase future me, toss it in, because that'll be really embarrassing. But
joke is truly on me. I would film that and say that there's no way I'd finish another book. I did. I finished Oathbound by Tracy Deonn, which brings my total at 3.7 stars, by the way, and that brings my total up to 104, which is double the amount of weeks in a year. So I read on average 2 books a week. Technically 8.6 books a month. Good job, me.
But thank you. I hope to see you next year. Make sure to follow, subscribe, comment. If you disagree with me and my opinions on any of these books, tell me why. Tell me why I should give it a second chance. And if you agree with me, also tell me why. Just tell me why we like each other. Tell me what you ate today. if you've made it this far, make sure to follow me elsewhere. Follow me on Instagram at Chasing Days with 2 G's, or on TikTok at Chasing Days with 1 G. If you hate me, tell me why. If you like my new hair color, let me know. My apologies for having such a sharp decline from an evening gown versus a giant t-shirt, but there's only so much production value that we have in this world, and I devoted all of mine to makeup and hair. So thank you. I'll see you next year.